You are part of the executive branch, and your job is to enforce the laws, not to make them, not to interpret them. That's for the courts. It's to enforce the laws and to represent the people of the state of Wyoming. But yet, with all of this, all of these people saying this, here we are. It would be kind of interesting, and it might shorten up the meeting a lot. Maybe we could just ask for a show of hands from the people that are here in the audience and ask them, how many people here are in favor of this? And then ask, how many are against it? And you're probably going to find a good 80 to 90, if not, well, feel free. If you're against it, feel free to raise your hand. These are the people of the state of Wyoming. They're the ones that you're supposed to be working for. That's the oath that you took. If this project was so great and wonderful, why isn't it they haven't discussed possibly using purple hydrogen? From what I understand from an expert, this whole project would take about 48 acres. They could get stuff from tall grass, the natural grass from tall grass. They wouldn't be using water as their source. There would be no wind turbines. But why is it that they're not doing that? Gee, the common denominator seems to come down to the subsidies. And boy, we could still maybe do this project, do it with purple hydrogen. They could go out and have their business deal and make their fuel, their jet fuel. But no, they're bound and determined to do it this way and take up thousands of acres. Do it. I'll tell you, I've had people tell me about the water. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm extremely concerned about the water. Water was just talked about here a little earlier by one of the other gentlemen and how it's a concern. Well, it's a huge concern. A huge concern. And I'll tell you what, there isn't an agricultural operation in the state of Wyoming that can operate without water. And I think we're about to see that. There's where I think the biggest threat to our ranches is over the water. And in Niobrara County, I'll guarantee you, our ranch is in the heart of all of this. We are completely surrounded on all sides. A huge part of that is state land. A huge part of it is on private land. I talked to one of the other private owners that's involved into this project the other day, and I told him, I said, you know, friends are friends, and I'm not going to let this get in the way of our friendship. However, I've got concerns as and he was very well, knew my stance on this. And he borders me on the north. He now borders me a lot on the east, and he also borders me a little bit on the west. And he asked me, he said, what's your biggest concern on all of this? And I said, I almost said his name, but I said, it's the water. And he says, you know, I'm starting to see that. And Pronghorn will not answer us. Pronghorn or Sidewinder will not actually answer us specifically when they sat in my house and offered me $47 million over the next 55 years. And I turned them down. First off, I said, well, you know what? That's a long ways from now. I hope I make it to my next birthday. And that's, oh, by the way, 8 hours away, which was true. I said, 55 years from now, when you start actually paying us some money, I'm not going to be around. But for my grandkids and everything else, that might not even buy me a loaf of bread at the grocery store. I said, so don't be blowing smoke up my skirt. This is not good for the state of Wyoming. It's going to hurt our tourism industry drastically. It's going to hurt our ag industry. Like I told you in April, let's let the entrepreneurs and stuff start to develop this, just like the automobile was developed over years. Let's find out the facts. Let's just don't jump the gun. just because it sounds like it's going to give some money. And to Mr. Meyer here at the last meeting, I said to him, I said, the state of Oregon and the state of Colorado thought it was a really good idea to go ahead and legalize marijuana, because look at all of the revenue we're going to get off of that. Sure sounds like a great idea. In retrospect, years later, it's costing those states a whole hell of a lot more money in the medical industry. It's costing them a whole hell of a lot more money in enforcement and litigation than they even think they're getting. It is costing those states a lot more than what they're bringing in. And this is another one of these that is just going to be a boondoggle, and it's not a good idea. With that, I would like to thank you for your time, and I greatly appreciate the fact that we've been allowed to address you this time. And I hope that actions speak louder than words, that the people of this board will rethink what they have been considering and show the people of the state of Wyoming really what you're standing for. Thank you.
Questions? Okay, Mr. Treasurer?
Just because I don't want to have anybody get the wrong idea, while I was in the Senate, I had several opportunities to address the marijuana issue, and I never voted to legalize it and never worked on any of those bills that did.
And I appreciate
And I
that.
agree with you 100% on the marijuana issue there. But to put it in perspective, the first windmill was put in the state of Wyoming in 1982. That was 42 years ago. It was funded, 100% with federal monies from NASA and from the Energy Department. And it was funded during the time period of Ronald Reagan. And I can tell you from my perspective, I never thought that Ronald Reagan was a woke liberal. But tying windmills to being a woke liberal to me seems like that's not basically something that you can tie on Ronald Reagan. And I know that in the development of the Permian Basin, when they couldn't get power to go on the grids, the energy companies down there basically put in windmills so they could pump oil. And I don't think one Texas oil man down there is a woke liberal. So the blanket statements that we get on these things is that, I'm not a big favor of wind, but I'm a big favorite of property rights. You guys have got property rights too, but I don't think they're quite as strong as somebody that actually, like you got that land from 1886, you pay taxes on it, it's your land. To me, you should be able to do anything you want to on your land. And so property rights, I think, is my issue. And I talked about the fiduciary duty before and who I represent. And as a land board, it's a constitutional office. And we're bound to represent the school children in the institutions of the state of Wyoming. And that's where, in that particular case, that's where we're bound. On a slip board, it's a little bit different. We're still fiduciaries, but we don't have that constitutional directive. And you said that we're there to basically enforce the laws and implement the laws. And that's the law. My oath says that I protect, I'm basically bound to support, defend, and obey the Constitution of Wyoming and the Constitution of the United States. And that's what the oath says. And I didn't get that by doing anything wrong or running a crooked race, so that's what the oath says. And, I'm gonna continue to live up to my constitutional duties. I can't do anything less. I understand the situation that you guys are in. You're impacted. There's no doubt, and that I know you're impacted, and I feel your pain on that. And I tell you, walking away from $47 million, even though the future value of that, like you say, it might be worth, in 50 some years, it's probably, you could probably get $5 million today, and it might be worth that much over that time period. But yeah, I understand that you guys are against this. And but basically, look at that oath on the Constitution and what a state land board is. It's a different cat. It really is. And I think that there's a way that we can try to mitigate the impacts on these things. But right now, it's in the Supreme Court. And when it gets out of the Supreme Court, there'll be a decision. But even though we are a substantial part, the state is a very substantial part of the number of mills that are going to be out there. This thing's going to go on without us. And I got the same information that you guys did, is that no, we don't need the subsidies. We can go on without it. And this thing will probably drag out by the time it gets out of the courts, where all the subsidies are going to be gone, and we'll come back here in a year and the subsidies are gone. And I guess we'll find out the truth as to whether they need subsidies or not. I think it'd be a heck of a lot more profitable for them with them. There's no doubt about that. This is a long thing. You guys are basically running out the clock on this deal. And I think we'll find out in a year or so just what's going to happen. But your delaying circumstances here are going to probably set this thing back to where there's not going to be subsidies, aren't going to be an issue. So, I think every one of us understand the concerns that you have, and I know that there are impacts. But from my perspective, is that everybody that has land, that they have the right to use it if it's legal. Can't grow marijuana on it in Wyoming, that's for sure. So,
Do you want to respond? Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Meyer. I'm an extremely big advocate of property rights. The issue is getting a lot more confusing, though. A person that owns a piece of property has a right to keep the value of that land. And we do know there was one gentleman, he spoke to you in April of how up by Glen Rock, a project went in around him and his property values just dropped. What's wrong with his property rights? Years ago, people used to put in things like a salvage yard. It was pretty easy. Put up a big fence and nobody else has to see it. This is one of these topics that is a real toughie with property rights. Real toughie.
it is.
And with that, I guess I need to temper myself here a little bit. I've taken the oath myself twice. I very much understand the oath, and I very much respect of what you said in reference to your oath. But we, as the people of the state of Wyoming, need to also be recognized. And I really hope that we can, and do it with your fiduciary responsibility. Really think about this. Is this a good idea or a bad idea? How is this going to affect everybody's property rights? Not just the person that wants to put on his property, but his neighbor. How is it going to affect the property rights of somebody that loses water on their ranch and now it's no longer a viable operation? We've got so little of water that we can't afford to lose any, not any. So yes, property rights are, I gave my oath to uphold the Constitution. And with that, the possibility that I would lose my life. And I very strongly believe in those oaths. And I very strongly believe in the Constitution, and I very strongly believe in property rights, but that's part of the point I've been making. This is only 42 years into the making. It took the automobile over 80 years to overcome the horse. This is too new a technology to gamble too much on, especially when it's at odds with our oil and gas industry, and it's at odds with our ag industry, and it's at odds with our tourism industry. Those have protected the state of Wyoming, and we need to protect them. I think that this could be a great and wonderful thing someday, and I hope it can. I hope solar and wind can take its place in history like the automobile and certain other inventions have, like the light bulb. But it's too early yet.
Well, I would say that, you know, I agree with you on the purple hydrogen. I think that's probably the right way to go about that. You know, it makes more sense in that regard. Now, on the water situation, is that the county commissioners could basically do an agreement, a water use agreement, with the state engineer's office to put the protections in there that you need. Now, if these guys get a water right that's a water right now, the only thing they can get is a consumptive use, which means that it's going to actually help people who still have a well, because that water stays in the ground. So, you know, because the consumptive use is actually what's something's used at the crop, making the carbohydrates and all of those different things. But all the evaporation goes away. If they bought somebody's well or leased that water, then that water would stay in the ground and it would benefit the people that actually have current wells. And I know that you guys have got, I think, a past with the state engineer up there where I think some things weren't honored when you were in a control area, and actually they let some wells go in that probably shouldn't have been in there. So I understand your apprehension about whether or not there's going to be the protections that you need to have in these situations. From what I heard, and I don't know whether they've actually got the water, that they were going to use water from Pathfinder. And now that carries a whole bunch of baggage too. And I don't think that they understand the water rights as well as probably you or I do. And so, but in the next year or so, they'll either sort them out. But I think this whole thing is going to take at least a year to sort out when it gets through the whole process. And we'll see what the court says on the backside. Meanwhile, what I've got to do as the state treasurer is try to continue to make money for the education of our kids. And we're doing a good job of that. But we want to make sure that we can use our state lands, because that's basically what Congress told us we could do. And that's basically what the Constitution said we have to do. So we've got to figure out how to get the best returns off those state lands. And at the same time, trying to make sure that we're not impacting the other property rights or other landowners. And if they are impacted, we got to figure out some way to make it right with them.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other questions? Madam Director, I see Wendy Volk is requesting an opportunity. Before that, there was a Joseph Kibler. Mr. Bump, can we let them in?
Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
Yes.
Wendy Volk.
Yes, Ms. Volk, we can hear you.
Thank you. I'll just want to read my comments, and I will also submit it. I intended to be there today, and I apologize. I had an unexpected real estate transaction that I'm involved with that kind of required my attention. My name is Wendy Volk, and I'm here to comment on the rapid expansion of industrial wind energy leasing on Wyoming State Trust lands and the emergence of what many now refer to as the Wyoming Wind Wall. This is no longer a series of isolated projects. It is a continuous or near continuous industrial corridor stretching across multiple counties and landscapes. Wyoming is undergoing one of the most dramatic land use changes in its history. From Cheyenne up to Douglas and Glen Rock, and from Cheyenne to Rawlins, there's more than 200 miles of proposed wind turbines, haul roads, substations, transmission lines, and associated infrastructure that are forming across ranch lands and wildlife habitat. These projects would create a continuous landscape on the eastern half of Wyoming of 600 to 700-foot turbines and round-the-clock blinking lights. While developers often present these projects as independent, the impacts are cumulative, visually, operationally, and ecologically. Our regulatory framework designed decades ago was not intended to address development at this scale or concentration. Evaluating projects one by one while ignoring what surrounds them creates blind spots large enough to affect entire landscapes, surface lessees, and communities. Wyoming deserves better than a piecemeal process for decisions of this magnitude. By way of background, my husband, Todd Dreamer, and his family operate our family's historic ranch in Horse Creek, Wyoming, about 26 miles northwest of Cheyenne. For 6 generations, our ranch has emphasized conservation, sustainable grazing, and wildlife habitat protections. Our ethic has been stewardship, improving the land and not industrializing it. This summer, we were formally notified of a proposed 170 turbine Laramie Range wind project near our property. The letter was mailed to us saying that we were within 1 mile of this proposed project. The application covered 56,000 acres, 2.5 times the size of Cheyenne. And through our own research, we discovered the project would border 2 sides of our ranch. The wind company said we were not even touching the project. In September, the Laramie County Commissioners denied the site permit. We are grateful that for that decision, and we agree with the Commission's conclusion that the project did not meet standards necessary to protect residents, infrastructure, and the rural character of the Laramie Range. That experience made clear why cumulative review matters, because these impacts are not theoretical. They affect real families and working landscapes. My comments today are grounded in Chapter 6 of the Wyoming Office of State Lands and Investment Wind Energy Leasing Rules, and in the board's constitutional fiduciary duty to manage trust lands for the long-term benefits of their beneficiaries. While Chapter 6 provides a solid framework for individual leases, the pace and scale of current development raise serious concerns that the corridor level impacts are not being adequately evaluated before leases are approved. I respectfully urge the board to consider several actions already within your authority. First, require corridor scale or regional analysis when multiple leases are proposed within the same viewshed, watershed, or transmission corridor. Section 3B allows you to assess the manageability and income potential in combination with adjoining state lands, and the authority is critical here. Second, apply the determination of substantive impairment cumulatively and not just lease by lease. Incremental impacts to grazing, access, noise, and operations may seem minor individually, but collectively they can materially impair existing surface leases. Third, limit the long initial lease terms and require meaningful performance benchmarks. Shorter terms with clear milestones would protect the state from long-term speculative land control. Fourth, use competitive requests for proposals when multiple applications arise within the same corridor. Competitive leasing ensures full market value and allows evaluation based on total trust benefit, not just who applied first. And finally, strengthen the financial assurance requirements to account for corridor scale decommissioning and reclamation risk. Inflation index bonding and third-party cost estimates would better protect the state from standard assets. In closing, wind energy leasing on state trust lands is not simply an energy issue. It is an exercise in long-term asset management. Your fiduciary duty requires not only maximizing near-term revenue, but preserving land value, flexibility, and stewardship for future generations. Once agricultural land is converted to industrial use, it is effectively lost forever. I know this as a 30-year real estate professional. Once you change it, we're not getting it back. Wyoming's working landscapes should be treasured. There are no other places in the world that you can see the vistas you have in Wyoming. And our landscapes are not only productive ranches, they are wildlife habitat, open space, and cultural heritage. Thank you for your time, your careful consideration, and your service as stewards of Wyoming trust lands. I appreciate this opportunity to submit these comments for the record. I would like to emphasize that asking for cumulative corridor level review is not opposition to wind energy. It is request for responsible asset management. Wyoming's trust lands are finite. Once they're fragmented and industrialized at this scale, the loss of flexibility, productivity, and landscape integrity cannot be undone. The board has both the authority and the obligation to look beyond the individual applications and consider the full long-term consequences of this development pattern. I urge you to do so deliberately and carefully. And I don't know if you can see this, but I took all of the projects that I've researched in the last 7 months, not only here in Cheyenne, but going all the way up to Glen Rock in the Douglas area where you are, going all the way over to Rollins. But I've seen maps showing that there could be potentially 4,000 wind turbines in Wyoming, and that will destroy what we have so sacred here in Wyoming. Thank you very much, Commissioner and members of the board.
Thank you, Ms. Volk. I think the secretary has a question for you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And one thing before I ask a question, I just think that we should go back to testimony in the room after this, because I've been looking at the chat and they're just asking to speak. But we've always had the convention of first receiving testimony in the room, those that have traveled here. And I've long been for virtual testimony, but the convention is that it comes after the in-person. But Ms. Volk, I appreciate your comments, your work on the Laramie County issue. And I do want to delve into this briefly, because after the approval in April, we held a series of town halls across the state opposing these woke wind projects. And we heard one of the points that I wanted to make on these town halls, I thought was very important that was out there, was that county commissions have to approve permits for these wind and solar facilities. State law is very clear on that. And there was a town hall in Converse County. There's another one in Platte County where commissioners, supporters of commissioners pushed back on that and said that that really they have to agree to these things. Now, we're not saying that they can just do it arbitrarily, but that there is a clear process in state law for them to deny the permits for these projects, and that getting a permit is a predicate, is a sine qua non, meaning the project cannot happen if the commissioners do not approve the permit. And what happened in Laramie County was the commissioners said no. And so you were very involved in that, and that happened in September after all these town halls, and it was really disturbing the way that this misinformation and the media started picking it up, saying commissioners couldn't do anything. And I just want to take this opportunity, if you could just speak to the fact that it is very clear in state law that commissioners can deny the permits for these projects.
Mr. Chairman, through you.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, we were notified in June of the letter from the Laramie Range Wind Project, and they had a brief public comment open house, and then I started reaching out, trying to find out from the company where our property was in relationship to this. And then the county notified us from the Laramie County Planning Department and setting up their website and all of the documents. And I did read the 490 some page application submitted for the site permit. And almost every other page, I started putting sticky notes of questions and concerns. And I thought that as when I reached out to the company to ask, can you please tell us where we are, what's the scope? And because it pertains to Laramie County land use regulations, the company had submitted their application on our former land use applications for our county, which are different than our most recently approved ones. Once we got the word out to people about the application, to read it, to understand it, that was when it became more apparent that no one knew about it. I took the map that the company gave us, which was on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, and you can see at the top, maybe, there was Chugwater at the top of the piece of paper, Laramie over in the right-hand corner of the paper, or left-hand corner of the paper, and there's a postage size stamp showing 56,000 acres. They didn't show us where we were. And when I blew that up to 11 by 17 size paper, I could show that there is in fact 6,100 acres that State Land Trust and there's 50,000 acres that are owned by our two neighbors. We respect their property rights, but we're changing prime agriculture land to a major industrial use that is 2.5 times the size of Cheyenne, the largest city in the state. And we do lease land. And thank you. We do at the Dreamer Ranch, we lease land for agriculture grazing purposes on a 10-year basis. These projects could go up to 75 years, forever changing the landscape. I'm 60 years old, and I hope to see the land continue to thrive for another more generations of our 6th-generation family. But to address you, Secretary Grays, is yes, that was the first part of our land use regulations was saying the site permit needed to be approved first, and then it would go before the Industrial Siting Council for approval.
Thank you very much. There's a person online, Niffy. I'm not going to call on you now. We're going to call on you in a few pieces, but having been a soccer ref for a long time, I know not to wreck names. So if you could please, when you identify yourself, when we call you, tell us your right name or how to pronounce your name. Thank you. Please, back in the room here.
Mr. Chairman and members of the board, this is my granddaughter, Adelaide. I'm a 4th-generation rancher on Deer Creek, and my granddaughter is pregnant with number 7th generation. So you can see why I'm here, okay? Why I'm concerned about preserving our culture and our heritage. I'm not going to talk much about the pronghorn lease, just because you all know my position on that. And everybody in the room knows I've not kept it
Mr.
secret.
Chairman.
So,
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. Could you please identify yourself?
oh, Mike Stevens, I did, didn't I?
Yeah, you did.
Oh,
You did.
I did. Okay. So I'm going to turn this over to Adelaide, okay?
I'm Adelaide Bopp, Chairman and the members of the board. We believe that Wyoming state land wind leasing procedures are in need of serious overhaul. If the board is going to approve wind leases on state land, it must have the courage to fully consider the rights of private landowners nearby, including those who do not want industrial development adjacent to their homes, ranches, and communities. In some cases, denying the use of public land may be the most responsible decision. Wind leasing is not comparable to grazing leases that families have held for generations, leases where the land is stewarded as if it is their own. Wind development is an industrial scale and permanent impact, and it must be evaluated and vetted accordingly. These opportunities do not come up every month, and the consequences last far longer than a single-term lease. In many parts of Wyoming, wind development has reached a saturation point. The public is increasingly struggling to accept additional projects, particularly when they feel excluded from the process. Many wind developers are out-of-state and foreign-owned entities pursuing substantial tax credits and public subsidies. Ownership changes frequently. These companies will not live with the long-term impacts. The communities will. Too often, the developer first, and sometimes the only voice that the board hears. They arrive early, they control the narrative, and by the time the public becomes aware, the process is already moving forward. You cannot rely solely on developers to be the experts. Many proposed wind lease areas, including the Pronghorn Project, are located in critical winter range for mule deer, antelope, as well as sage-grouse habitat. If the state land board cannot protect Wyoming's natural resources for current and future generations, then who will? Not all Wyoming state land is open for business, and not all parcels are appropriate for wind development. Awarding leases and pushing the burdens onto counties, planning commissions, and local government creates division, conflict, and unnecessary expense, often for minimal return to state land trust. To be clear, one oil and gas lease on state land north of Glenrock can generate more revenue in a single year than the entire Pronghorn wind lease will generate over its lifetime, with a footprint of fraction of the size. A few tanks and a vaporizer disappear from your view when you leave the site. 700 wind foot turbines do not. In fact, they're in the back of my wedding pictures. We ask you, what is more palatable for Wyoming? Wyoming should be investing its time and effort into responsible oil and gas development while preserving landscapes, night skies, wildlife, and heritage that define this state. We spoke directly to 62 landowners owning 40 acres or more within a 10-mile radius of the Pronghorn lease. 54 opposed. Two were undecided and 6 were in favor. This is an overwhelming opposition. This is what we mean by listening to the people. We understand that your jobs are not easy and often thankless. We understand that mistakes can happen. But it's time to listen more closely to the people of Wyoming and the residents to make meaningful changes to state wind leasing process. As wind turbines continue to dominate skylines and red blinking lights obscure our night skies, it will only become harder to convince the Wyoming citizens that these projects are in their best interest. And respectfully, we will not simply get used to them. We thank you sincerely for the opportunity to voice our concerns, and we hope this dialogue helps you create informed decisions regarding state wind leasing in the future.
Yeah, we really do thank you for this. And so we can have a voice. And I invite any of you to come out to the ranch anytime, one-on-one, all of you together, and we'll see Box Elder. We'll go over to Box Elder. We'll go over to Deer Creek, and look at where this is going to be. It's our, I told you once, it's our bighorns, it's our Tetons. And it's a prime piece of real estate that don't need to be ruined.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Questions?
Thanks very much.
Okay.
And your great grandchild is there too. All right, back in the room here.
Chairman, members of the board, my name is J.J. Butler. I was born and raised in Converse County. I've been a lifetime resident of the state of Wyoming. 2017, I purchased 240 acres that surround the city limits of Glenrock. And it's took me 2 years to do a minor subdivision, got 5 lots around the golf course. Took another 4 years to do 15 lots, and half of that is bordering state land. Well, I'm mostly here to talk for the people that have purchased land from me. They're young families, they're right against the state property, they're building houses right now. What happens when a wind turbine comes up? Nobody wants to live next to one. They're gonna be in the shadow of one. They're gonna lose their property value. They'll never be able to recapture anything that they've invested into the community if they were forced to leave because of the circumstances of nobody wanting to live under a wind tower, if this was to move forward. And I just want to speak on their behalf and not mutter what everybody else has to say and be repetitious, but it's going to decrease the property value for myself substantially. I'm used to getting stomped on, but I don't want to see these families that are just new coming up building and lose half their equity. I have a couple quick questions if I could educate myself real quick with some answers. If you're moving forward with the project, are these bondable projects? Say they want to put up 20 towers. Do they have to, on state ground, create a bond? We do in the oil and gas industry, correct?
Madam Director, I suspect that there may be some questions that come up during the testimony here. I'm wondering if there is a way that we can handle that and get back to people on that as opposed to sort of acting on the fly.
Mr. Chairman, we can compile questions and then post answers to them for folks so that they can have answers to those
Would
questions.
that be adequate? I think
Yeah,
that
that's
would
good
be
enough.
complete.
I'll just go through my list of questions.
Okay, thank you.
And why I have a question. So if you bond, say for every site, you create a bond. The state holds that bond. If we're moving forward and you chose to build any type of a wind farm. You can hold that bond and you'll be just like the Oil and Gas Commission. It will exceed what is generated or the value for an abandonment. What happens when these projects don't work? Let's say that they abandon the project in the middle. who's going to pay for this? Who's going to take these down and bury them in my 240 acres? Probably be the idea. Somebody will say they're close. The state's going to have to fund it. Where's that going to come from? Well, it's going to come out of our pockets. And just looking forward, this, it's been said before, that it's not going to stand on its own 2 feet. It's going to be subsidized to do these projects. When the feds come in and they pull out any of this funding and they stop halfway, there we are with a bunch of turbines that ain't turning. And what are they? Now they're a liability. On who? Us, as a state, on state ground. And I just want to know that a lot of these issues need to be covered and thought about. And if we're worried about losing money in our school boards, it's going to come out of all of our funds. This is state ground. This is, as you've took on your responsibility, but it's still our grounds. We are all taxpayers, we're residents, and we treat them as our grounds, whether we be grazing or recreational. And we adore our Wyoming and the majestic views and everything. The reason we're here, I love the wind. Keeps the out-of-staters out of state. But just appreciate you hearing my views, and thanks for having us all here. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll hear from you and then we'll go to Niffy. So please.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thank you. My name is Teresa Sheets and I live out on Box Elder Road in Glen Rock. My significant other couldn't be here today because he's out of state working. So I'm speaking on both of our behalves. From the early 1800s, my family, or our family, ranched in Southwest Wyoming. Our ranch was on Green River, approximately 40 miles south of Rock Springs. Our family ran cattle from Pinedale to Utah. Our ranch went on for over 100 years until 1962, when the Bureau decided to put in the Flaming Gorge Reservoir and flooded our ranch and many others along the Green River. After the flooding of that, our family moved out of state to go do work. And that's where I met my boyfriend that I'm currently with. We've been together for over 44 years now. His absolute love was for this state, and he wanted me to see it, and we immediately started coming back here after we got together. And we continued coming back here for 40 plus years, visiting numerous times a year on our vacations. But our ultimate dream was to come back here and start a ranch of our own. That was a huge dream of ours. But due to several obstacles, life, sick family, work, we spent 22 years plus in law enforcement up there. We never did get down here until 2018, when we found a very small chunk of land in this beautiful state to call our home, right at the base of the Laramie Mountains in Glen Rock. But never did that dream include 267 wind turbines and hundreds, or if not thousands, of solar panels. How is this going to benefit Converse County? None of the electricity generated, we all know, is not going to be hooked to the grid. Where is the $1.7 billion that Pronghorn has said they're going to put into the state of Wyoming? Where's it going to come from? No one knows if the hydrogen generated from this project is even going to come to fruition. And if it doesn't, then we've destroyed the Front Range and our backyards for what? We all know water is an issue. We've heard that many times today. Water doesn't look good for this year, at least not yet. And last year when we were doing Jackalope Days, we were told by the residents that they were already in water rations for the year for various reasons. So where is all the water going to come from that's going to run this facility? We didn't work our backsides off for over 40 years to build our dream home. and then have it destroyed and devalued. But we did elect you to do what is best for us, the citizens of this state. Your responsibility is to us, not for those with millions and billions of dollars to destroy what everyone comes to Wyoming to enjoy. Our mountains, our streams, hunting, fishing, hiking, camping, and everything that Wyoming has to offer. We please ask that you do not allow the destruction of our Front Range and our backyard. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And I'm going to call on Niffy and then you'll be back. So. Niffy, if you're trying to address the board, it appears you are on a muted microphone. Okay, we'll proceed. We'll come back to you next one. So if you want to come, that would be great. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and members of the SLIB board, it's really nice to be able to talk to you. The last time I talked to you at
Can you identify yourself for the record, please?
My name is Ann Brand. Both have an E on the end. And my family had a 100-year lease with the state of Wyoming, right not far from the Pumpkin Vine Road. And we no longer have that lease because this board decided back in the day when I was in college that their responsibility to the schools, it would be best served to sell that lease. And while my family asked to be able to purchase that land, we were notified that we had to pay attention to the local paper and show up on the courthouse steps, right? Fast forward, I started a nonprofit in 2020, and that's when I took this board on a tour of that area of the Highway 287, Tice Siding, Pumpkin Vine Zone. So for people in this room who don't know where that area is, if anyone has ever read My Friend Flicka, if anyone has ever seen one of those 4 movies that have been produced from that book, it is my personal opinion that book has done more for the tourism of this state than any other thing. And my family has run Wyoming's oldest downtown business since 1905, a photography business, and I can't tell you how many Japanese tourists and German tourists have quoted that book, which is why I started the nonprofit, is because of wildlife habitat and history. And so that's how I took a deep dive into the Rail Tie Wind project. And that is why in 2020, I made public comment before this board, and the board voted against leasing to that developer. And then very similar to the December 18th executive session, although it wasn't an executive session, gossip hit. That's the beauty of Wyoming. And we learned a couple days before that Rail Tie Wind would be discussed again and put up for a vote. And there was a lot of concern because Rail Tie Wind was not on the agenda. And so I took the same tactic on December 15th, I believe, as was taken back in 2021. I sent an email to the administrator of this board, and I wanted to clarify because I had received emails, text messages, phone calls from, and I have to refer to my map, Albany County, Carbon County, Converse County, Goshen County, Platte County, Laramie County, Natrona County, and Niobrara County in concerns to this. So I want to know what the difference was when I sent my email asking if public comment would be taken on December 18th, what the difference between Rail Tie and this conversation regarding Pronghorn was. I think we have a real opportunity. I'm listening to people in this room and their concerns, and I think many wonderful comments have been made today, and I'm an optimist. And I agree with many of the comments that have been made that say that this board needs to take a broader view regarding what is optimal use of state land. I think we are not taking into account the full cost of permitting over 4,000 wind turbines, because those are approved permits. We're talking of over 3,000 square miles of wind energy in this state. So when we're discussing fiduciary responsibility, we're not taking into account economic externalities. So I have been involved in multiple wind projects. I sued the Bureau of Land Management in 2023 for failing to notify the Wyoming public regarding the Rock Creek Gen Tie line, which is a connected action to the Rock Creek Wind Project, which spans from I-80 all the way to Wheatland Reservoir 2. So that is a large project. That was a remand, and that project is up and spinning. I see it every night. It's 28 miles from Laramie, Wyoming. I see it blinking. I came before the Public Service Commission to communicate clearly on behalf of supporters of my nonprofit. I have a large number of supporters of my nonprofit that are ranchers, that are farmers, that have conservation easements. I have a large number of retired professors with specialties regarding wildlife and geology and water. And I went before the Public Service Commission because Rock Creek was not a benefit or a necessity to the people of Wyoming because of eagle externality. And the head of the Public Service Commission at that time, Mary Throne, asked the economist hired by Rocky Mountain Power. That project was built by Invenergy Corporation, but it sold to Rocky Mountain Power. And that economist, under oath, told Mary Throne correctly that yes, eagle externality, in other words, eagle death, is something that economists calculate. Then Mary asked, without skipping a beat, if eagle externality had been calculated regarding the Rock Creek Wind Project, and the answer was no. And I also watched that project get approved that day. And the irony of that is, when I saw the wildlife study that was supposed to be out, that we all waited for after that approval was issued, it was redacted. And I asked for access to that information, and I was called by Rocky Mountain Power, and they told me that they would give me access to the wildlife information if I would agree to a non-disclosure. I told them I wasn't interested, and I filed my federal lawsuit on behalf of my members. So I'm here today because eagle externality is a real issue. And Chairman, you and I met on March 17th of this year, and you were very gracious. I was told by members and supporters of the Albany County Conservancy, in particular, Mr. Degenfelder, that I would be lucky to have 25 minutes with you. So it was very nice to have those 40 minutes and have you address concerns from the representative I had there from the ranching community and the representative I had from the defense community, and also Mr. Degenfelder. And I would like to bring us all to central point. We need to do what's in the economic interest of this state. When I took this board on a tour of that state leased land, I know that you were there, Auditor Racinas, and then I know that Balo was there as the superintendent of the public school system. The rest of the board was not present, but that was 5 years ago. And rail tie wind was approved at the county and the state level. And that project is owned by the same Spanish company as the wind project that Ms. Volk referred to today. So these issues aren't going away. And I also hear all these comments. So I have done a lot of research. So you're correct, Treasurer Meyer, in the fact that our first wind turbine goes way back. But in doing a deep dive, it seems that in 2009, the people of Wyoming, in particular cattle ranchers who lease state land for their cattle grazing, got really worked up about wind energy development and how it was impacting things. Fast forward, now we're dealing with 3,000 square miles of wind energy development. So I would encourage that transparency and communication take precedence when we're dealing with one another, whether it's an election year or it's not an election year. To quote my plaintiff in the Railtie Wind Project, biologist Michael Lockhart, who's worked with Fish and Wildlife for over 32 years, and now as a private contractor supplies eagle data specific to a specific study group that is satellite telemetry. So they have geotagging, they wear devices. Over 47% of the eagles that he has been tracking for over 12 plus years are killed directly by wind blade strike. We are not talking about small tomatoes when we're talking about eagle externality. It's affecting the economy of this state. All you have to do is use ChatGPT to see how much money wind energy is bringing to this state, and it's embarrassing. And I remember seeing in the public comments back in 2021, very specific comments about the poor return on investment of that Railtie wind lease regarding economic viability. And I remember that the only dissenting vote, the second round for that wind project, was you, Treasurer Meyer. And so I really think that we have a opportunity in the state to preserve our second largest industry, which is tourism. And tourism revolves around historic sites and wildlife. And outfitting revolves around wildlife. And golden eagles aren't just an externality, they're an indicator species. So when golden eagles aren't doing well, nothing is doing well. We really need to pause and do what's in everyone's better interest. It is so important to the members and supporters of my nonprofit that on December 4th of this year, we filed a petition in federal court in the District of Columbia against Fish and Wildlife to acquire the dead eagle data that my plaintiff has submitted regarding humbly just 3 wind projects. 3. There are over 28 wind projects that I have been focused on that are creating cumulative impact to our wildlife and our historic sites in this state. And just to end this, where the Railtie Wind Project sits right now in federal court is that there was a motion granted because the federal government did not produce their legal records regarding a very egregious Section 106, 110F historic site violation. And this state should care about things like that. I was a consulting party because I represent hundreds of voices and we are focused on historic sites for over 5 years watching that process unfold. And I can tell you after sending communication in November, not 1 penny of that mitigation proposed in an adjoining county, not even in Albany County, has been granted. And that was supposed to occur to offset the impacts to the Ames National Historic Landmark. That is why this state should care. And that is why I look to all of you and I address everyone in this room. We can pull together. We can do what is good for Wyoming. We all love this state. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Brand. There may be questions. Are there questions, Madam Auditor?
Ms. Brand, thank you for being here. So is the Eagle data available through your nonprofit, or is that something if I reached out to you from Mr. Lockhart?
So the Eagle data that he supplies, he gives to federal agencies and other groups like USGS and Science Global. And it's more involved. So FOIA litigation goes much more rapidly than standard litigation does because it's very direct. Last October, we filed a FOIA focusing on Ecola Flats 1 and 2 and Dunlap Wind, which have been up and operative for years. But they are surrounded by both newer projects and also 2 federal projects that our conservancy's been looking at. One is 4 miles north of Medicine Bow. It sits entirely on federal land. It is called the Two Rivers Wind Project. They can't even count eagles correctly in that environmental assessment. And then the other one, Lucky Star Wind, sits on private land. And I will remind everyone in this room, this is so important, that we currently have an executive wind order, a temporary cessation and immediate review of federal wind leasing and permitting practices in light of various alleged legal deficiencies underlying the federal government's leasing and permitting of onshore wind. This is phrased onshore. Now, our press just wants to talk about offshore wind, but it's stated clearly in the executive wind order that we are talking about onshore wind, and everyone in this room should be hearing this. And why is this important? Because in June of this year, the Albany County Conservancy drafted 2 very concise questions for Secretary Burgum that Representative Hageman delivered on the floor of the Natural Resource Committee. The first question identified that all the EAs that flew through this state, and in 2009, that's why people were upset, is the rapid push for wind. We're seeing that more so now, right? Because if we push a little dirt by 2027 and it's been approved, then we qualify for our wind taxes. So those should have been environmental impact statements, and that is why rail tie wind has been picked up in international press, national press, and state press. It was a full environmental impact statement. Cumulative impact would indicate that all the environmental assessments in this state that flew by, just like the Rock Creek EA, should have been environmental impact statements. This state should be really focused on this. It's in their better interest. The second question was even more pointed. It delivered Michael Lockhart's statement. I am very careful about his statement and his data because I do not want to misrepresent. And so what I said today is exactly what Hageman delivered to Secretary Burgum, and she asked him if he would be focused on the protection of eagles, and he said he would. We need to ensure that we protect our own wildlife in this state. I would like to close with a quote that I thought was very poignant when I went to my 5th industrial siting hearing. So when I hear bonding questions and I hear all these other things, notice you can sign up at the state of Wyoming, go to industrial siting hearings because they're a real eye-opener. Okay? I'd like to quote Angie Bruce with the Wyoming Game and Fish. What we see a lot of is these developers coming in from out of state, and I'd like to add out of country, because Rail Tie Wind was owned by ConnectGen under Quantum Global Energy Equity, which is an oil and gas conglomerate. And because it drug out 5 years to get to Treasurer Meyer's comment, it is sold to Repsol in Spain. These don't go away. It was a previous wind project that dates back to the early 2000s. Once a lease has been signed, a lease exists and a lease can be sold forward. So I'd like to continue. So they almost are like house flippers. They do one piece of the process, they do the permitting, and then they sell it. And then someone does the construction and then they sell it. And then those who are managing it, they manage it as a different company, Bruce told the committee. That's when our job gets really hard because we're just constantly revisiting with them and talking about what their obligations were and when they were made. It's a mess. Let's help our elected and appointed officials. And please do your homework. I saw people pro se means for yourself, at the Chugwater Wind, Solar, and BESS Lithium Battery Facility Industrial Siting Division hearing. That hearing went 3 full days. It was approved like all the others. And I can't tell you, I've not seen any attorneys in this state do any more professional job than these pro se individuals. And I tend to question the ability to read a 2,500-page application. I would like to encourage that we take the time that the constituents in this room take all the time. I have yet to meet anyone that I haven't had high regard for who's been extremely educated and done their homework regarding this issue. You can reach out to any one of us and we can tell you about this. So I would expect nothing less from our elected and appointed officials and staff, because that's our future. We need to manage our resources. When tourism's our second economic driver, I'd like to also point out a great employer. Just take the Boswell Springs Wind Project near Rock River. The advertisements that were sent out by the Wyoming Employment, and I don't even know their title anymore, the Workforce Center, were in Spanish, and the interviews were conducted at a local motel.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Brand. I appreciate it. Thanks for your time and effort in this.
Mr. Chairman, can you remember why I voted against that wind project back then?
I remember that there was a woman who used to work for the state of Wyoming in research, and she was very diligent about studying the economics of that project. And she put them all right before you, and it was extremely poor return on investment on the property taxes. And I will also point out that if you just use ChatGPT, I'm going to pull this up because I took a picture on my phone. And we'll see if I can find it real quick. If you just take Converse County and you pull up the economics of wind energy, you'll see that you're making less than $5,800,000 from wind energy in Converse County. That's embarrassing. That's embarrassing that we think that is good revenue. I think this mindset that any money is better than no money, your subsurface mineral rights alone on state land, you're just not doing what private businesses, small proprietors like me, the state isn't being professional whatsoever. We are squandering immense resources for the promise of nothing. But that's a shame on us.
That refreshes my memory. Maybe I didn't think we were getting enough out of the lease.
You bet. You were embarrassed that day.
Yeah.
But it's amazing because I've watched other projects like Chugwater go right through the system. And I'll tell you, the economics aren't any different.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Ms. Brand, I think.
No, we're good. We're good. I just want to clarify, it did come up again. I wasn't going to mention this, but that project was a previous iteration of the board. So the membership was totally different. So some of us weren't here. So
thank you.
Oh, yeah, no, duly noted. Yeah.
Thanks. We have Niffy. Thank you. It looks like you're open for being able to address the board. Thanks.
Can you guys hear me?
We can.
Oh, great. Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the Wyoming Board of Land Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today and for your service to the state of Wyoming. My name is Niffy McNiff Buby, and I'm a member of the D.R. Whitaker Ranch. We're a legacy ranch that borders the Laramie Wind Range project in Laramie County. And I'm here simply as someone who cares deeply about Wyoming land and the people who work it and the long-term decisions being made on behalf of future generations. I want to start by saying I appreciate that the board is taking public comment at this time. After recent events and the court's decision, it matters that voices from the ground are being heard, so thank you. I'm not here as a policy expert or as an energy specialist. I'm here as someone who understands that land is not just an asset on a balance sheet. It's a working landscape. It's a livelihood, heritage, and identity. And once it's altered at an industrial scale, it's rarely returned to what it once was. Individually, wind projects can be presented as manageable, but from the ground level, when multiple projects begin stacking into long corridors across trust lands, the impacts change. Accesses change, grazing patterns change, wildlife movement changes. The open character that defines Wyoming is changed forever. Those cumulative impacts are not theoretical to the people who live and work alongside these lands. They're permanent. I recognize that the board has a fiduciary responsibility to generate revenue for trust beneficiaries. I also believe that that responsibility includes protecting long-term land value, flexibility, and stewardship. Short-term gains should never come at the expense of options we take away from future generations. My request today is very simple. Please slow down, take a broader view, and fully consider cumulative impacts when evaluating wind leasing on state land, trust lands, especially in the areas where development is forming continuous corridors. Wyoming trust lands are not easily replaced. Once they are committed to long-term industrial scale use, the decision is effectively irreversible. And with that, I thank you for listening and for time taken seriously with the responsibility entrusted to you. I appreciate the opportunity to be heard.
Thank you. Are there questions? Thank you very much for your testimony. Please come forward.
Mr. Chairman and members of the board, good afternoon. My name is Kelsey Stevens, and I live on Deer Creek Road with my husband and 2 children. Let me paint you a picture. It's a beautiful summer evening. The crickets and frogs are singing their evening tune. The air smells of freshly cut grass. A long, hot summer's day is finally behind you, and you're sitting on your front porch, watching the sun sink low on the horizon, the gleaming red hills glow in the fading light. Honestly, it's a view that'll take your breath away. I'm incredibly blessed to call this view my home, and this is where they want to place a wind farm. And no, we won't just get used to it. 13 years ago, as a young couple, my husband and I built our home with our own 2 hands alongside our family and friends, no contractors. We built our dream home there intentionally because of the land, the view, and the life that it allows us to live. 13 years ago, if someone had told me that when I stepped on my front porch, I'd be looking at wind towers on the face of the mountain, I would have laughed. To put industrial wind towers on the face of that mountain is, to me, deeply distasteful. It permanently alters a space that is so incredibly beautiful and natural. I come from a long line of ranchers, and I'm proud to be raising my children with deep roots in the ranching lifestyle. It would be devastating to lose the natural landscape that is such a core part of that upbringing. I'm also a local photographer, and one of the unique aspects of my business is that I am able to bring clients out to my family ranch. These mountains are the backdrop of many of my sessions. I can confidently say there's not a single client I have who wants wind towers in the background of their photos. This project would directly impact not only my home, but also my business and what I have to offer my clients. Throughout this process, I've lost trust. It feels as though had the people of Converse County not stood up and questioned this project, it would have moved forward without meaningful local scrutiny. The fact that legal review revealed concerns about compliance with our own governing laws has created uncertainty for many of us who are expected to trust this process. I am strongly opposed to this project, not only because of the potential impacts on our property value, but because of what it would do to our way of life and to a homestead that's been in our family for generations. I'm grateful for my father-in-law, Mike Stevens, and the people of Converse County that came together, and that you guys are here today to listen to those who will be directly affected. My family is one of those families. Whether it is the permanent visual impact, the effect on property values, or the broader consequences for our community, this decision will shape our lives for decades to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone have questions for Ms. Stevens? Thank you very much. Please.
Good morning, afternoon, chairman, members of the board, elected officials. My name is Jack Dills. I am from the better half of Converse County, lived there my whole life. We've been there long enough that if you look on the topographic map, there's a Dills Draw north of Glenrock. I don't support this project just because of, well, it's going to change the view. It's going to do horrendous things to Mike's view. I'm out on that state land every day. When I have a day off, I'm utilizing it. Now I know state land's not just for me, but a wind farm of this scale, what's it going to do to my access? You know, assuming they let me on, you know, I'm going to be able to take my kids out and my grandkids in 40 years and be like, kids, right here next to wind turbine 72B used to be teepee rings, but they got plowed under. You know, what are we doing? It's 40 years, you guys, 40 years of tying it up and making it ugly for everybody. You know, the travel and rec committee is going to have to redo all their come to Wyoming slogans and be like, look at our wind turbines. Never mind the Grovont. Never mind the Snake River. Never mind the Laramie Range. Look at what we got here. We've got wind turbines. Woohoo. It's just frustrating to me whether it's defending my home from wind turbine and industrial projects like this, or continually having to fight the game and fish every year for legislation that would be a detriment to us or to the residents. We shouldn't have to do this every year, but here we are. Just take into consideration. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Man, it's standing. I apologize.
I'm sorry that we're taking our time, but thank you very much for being here, sir.
Thank you guys very much. Thank you for the opportunity for the folks to be heard. I appreciate that very much, and I mean that very sincerely. I know that I came back in January as a freshman lawmaker in the Capitol. I came down and talked to all of you guys individually about a wind project that I hated.
Could you identify yourself for the name?
Oh, my name's Kevin Campbell, and I'm the representative for House District 62. I come before you today, Mr. Chairman, to address the dangerous precedent being set under the guise of fiduciary duty. The Pronghorn H2 project is being sold as a win for our schools. That's what our fiduciary responsibility is. But as a lawmaker and a steward of the state, I question this. I'm here to tell you that the maximum cash is not optimum revenue when it comes at the expense of the Wyoming brand. First, this project is built on a shaky legal foundation. Judge Peasley has already ruled that this lease invalid because it ignores our own statutes. Wyoming law defines wind leasing as a power for the grid. Pronghorn H2 is a private off-grid industrial plant. This is important. By allowing them to bypass the grid, you are allowing them to bypass the standard 5 to 8% royalties that our schools deserve. Instead, we're accepting a flat fee on this boondoggle rate while the developers laugh all the way to the bank. Second, let's talk about asset degradation. Your duty is to protect the corpus, the body of the trust. You cannot do this while placing 600-foot towers directly on the Oregon Trail. We're talking about industrializing a pristine segment of our nation's history. Once that viewshed is gone, it's gone forever. You are trading a national treasure in the multi-billion-dollar tourism industry for pittance. Pittance. The project plan map puts their 500-acre solar farm directly on a known pioneer graveyard. Third, look at the opportunity cost. Wyoming is on the very frontier for rare earth elements. By locking up 15,000 acres for half a century, you are physically blocking access to critical minerals that could generate generational wealth for our students, wealth that could dwarf these wind leases by billions. Fourth, this project is an environmental liability. It sits on a sage grouse core protection area and high-use raptor migration routes. Turning our skies into a Cuisinart for eagles and bats is not just a tragedy, it's a regulatory nightmare of fines and federal oversight. This impacts our big game migrations and our winter feed grounds. Tourism. Tourism is not just hotels, that's our outfitters, hunting licenses, fishing licenses. Furthermore, using our finite high desert water as industrial feedstock for electrolysis is a betrayal of every citizen who knows that Wyoming water is more precious than oil. Green hydrogen is not only a novel industry, but it is not economically competitive with other hydrogen technologies. You guys have been talking about purple hydrogen. There is no purple hydrogen. What you guys are talking about is turquoise hydrogen. Turquoise hydrogen uses methane and natural gas as a feedstock rather than water. In order to, just for comparison, this green hydrogen project requires 16,000 acres of land, 200 plus turbines, 500 acres of solar, and 300 acre feet of water. This hydrogen that they're going to produce at the market level right now is about $7 a kilogram. A kilogram is the energy equivalent to a gallon of gasoline. Let's put a different scenario on. Let's go with that turquoise hydrogen. Let's take a 50-acre brownfield, not our pristine state lands, a brownfield. Let's take the Texaco refinery in Evansville, Wyoming. Let's put a 50-acre turquoise hydrogen facility on that brownfield. Let's source our gas from Tallgrass gas plant right next door. They can create the exact same hydrogen for 50 cents to $1 a kilogram. What is the market going to want? The $7 green hydrogen or the $1 turquoise hydrogen? Turquoise hydrogen is the only hydrogen that does not use water as a feedstock. So I'm very, very supportive of it, as you all know. Lastly, I'm going to keep this short because I want you guys to hear from the folks behind me. I hope now you guys understand why I was so panicked about this project. As you can see, it carries a lot of weight. In leaving, I work for the people. The citizens of Glen Rock and Rolling Hills have been clear. They were not consulted and they do not want this. When you destroy their view sheds, you cause a direct drop in property values, which drains our local tax base. 15% decrease in value is what I usually hear. You are not helping our schools if you're defunding the local infrastructure. Please take that into consideration. Members of the board, remember the code of the West, and I encourage you all to ride for the brand. Thank you for your time this day, and I would stand for any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Representative, I have one. Representative, back in the 1970s, when we passed the Environmental Quality Act, there was a provision in it that was called rare and exceedingly uncommon. It allowed for a nomination to be done that could set aside portions of state land. And through the years, that has been used very sparingly. It would go before the Environmental Quality Council. Back in the early 2000s, I think they got a little bit overzealous and they decided the entire red desert should be designated rare and exceedingly uncommon. That prompted the legislature then to make it so that there is no way that rare and exceedingly uncommon lands can be designated. They can only be taken off the list. I have been trying for at least 4 years to repurpose that provision so that citizens like these could say, this is a very special part of Wyoming. This needs to be protected, which would then give this board more of an opportunity to say, here's a reason why we shouldn't be talking about fiduciary. Is there a chance that you could help support that if we can get that in this session?
I would be more than willing to work with you on that, Governor.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Mr. Chairman and the board, thank you for your time. I'm Bruce Rommel. I'm the mayor of the town of Glen Rock. Right in the middle of your wind farm and lease of state land is the water source for the town of Glen Rock. 2 of the turbines in their first design stand right on top of well number 1 and well number 7. They also have the right to drill for water. In the future, is the town of Glen Rock going to have to compete for water or have to kind of go find a new water source? I hope you take that into consideration for the use of the water and to make that type of hydrogen. Please consider that you're affecting a community of 2,500 people in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Madam Auditor.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And continuing on my other theme, I'm always happy to ask dumb questions in front of lots of people. But Mayor, help me understand a little bit of the history and I'm just trying to think about how we move forward. And I think the legislature has some good ideas. Glen Rock has a lot of wind energy around it already. Help me, and I don't want to name names or anything, but help me understand how those came to be and if those concerns were, I mean, I know they're not on state lands, but were those concerns equally as not addressed and how as a board, you know, our business is state lands, but how can we kind of look at that as a bigger picture?
I think if you would have, in the times of those other projects being done and through the Industrial Siting Council and the council would have listened and our commissioners would have listened, the people of Converse County would have asked for those. They were not in favor of any of those wind farms to be in and around our community. This one threatens the very life of the town of Glen Rock if something happens to that water out there. That's what I came to talk to you about. It very much affects a standing long community in the state of Wyoming and 2,500 people that live there. It's something to be very concerned about.
I'm just wondering where the harm's going to come. Is it from the volume, from pollution, or for what?
They have the right to drill. They can drill and take use up the water there. They have the right to drill and take water rights that way also. If they drill in that same area and it reduces the water flow in that aquifer, where's the town of Glen Rock go for water?
Well, is that aquifer recharged by the Platte, or how far is the Platte from Glen Rock? I mean, I just
Platte
wonder-
River to that is probably 9 miles away.
9 miles, yeah.
This is
From what I
against the
heard,
mountains.
they were-
It's a long ways from the North Platte River.
Yeah, from what I heard, they
It's
were
fed
going
from,
to.
probably, a lot of that aquifer is fed from the
Yeah.
Deer Creek and the little Deer Creek drainages
Yeah.
to
yeah,
the south.
Yeah, yeah, from what I heard that they were gonna get it from Pathfinder, but, you know. like-
They have, yeah, they're trying to get water out of the Platte River drainage, but
Mhm.
they have the right to drill for water also, which could very much concerns me in the future of the town of Glen Rock. I won't be there because
yeah,
I'm 70 years old, but
Yeah,
I'm still
yeah.
concerned, are we threatening the water source for a community of the state of Wyoming?
Yeah, the amount of water they said they were gonna use, I doubt if it would, but we have to, really look at our water
I'm
across.
concerned
the
about
state.
any water usage that way in the state of Wyoming
Yeah, yeah.
for our arid state. And
Yeah.
thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Please come on up. I see the blue jackets. You guys look amazing. Thank you. Thanks for being part of
Yes, thank you for
FFA.
having us. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. My name is Caitlin Williams, and I am a senior at Glen Rock Junior Senior High School. I am here today because the Pronghorn H2 project represents an unprecedented and unsustainable gamble with one of Converse County's most valuable resources, our water, which you just heard quite a bit about. Those in favor of this project have dictated this a clean energy project. However, the math behind the industrial process does not support this claim. This project poses a serious risk to our ranchers, our town, and our future. And there are 3 things I would like for you to consider regarding this proposal. The first being the net zero fallacy. Those in charge of developing this project claim they will use around 100 million gallons of water per year. To put that into perspective, that is nearly 2.4 gallons of purified water for every kilogram of hydrogen. These clean project developers argue that they will simply transfer water rights from the North Platte River, so there's no net increase in consumption. For those of you that are unsure of what this means, the project managers plan to purchase existing water rights from ranchers and landowners because essentially the same amount of water is being taken out. However, a transfer on paper does not change the effect it will have. If this were permitted, a river that was sustaining seasonal agricultural use will now be providing water for a 24/7 industrial extraction process. The intensity and timing of this demand will cause permanent year-round damages to our water supply that doesn't even account for the droughts that may occur. The hidden cost of purification is the second thing that I'd like for you to consider. The Pronghorn H2 project involves a process of electrolysis. Oh, I might be saying that wrong. Wonderful. Which the term is used to describe using electricity to split water into its 2 fundamental compounds, right? Clean hydrogen, fuel, and then oxygen gas. What the developers of this project often like to gloss over is that ultra pure water is required for this to occur. They require 100 million gallons of pure water, meaning in order to achieve that amount, they likely have to draw double it. So I ask you, where will that wastewater go? Will it be reinjected into our soil? How will it affect the salinity of our local water table? We are being asked to approve a project before these basic environmental safety questions have been answered. The last thing I'd like for you to consider is the threat to domestic and agricultural aquifers. The developers of this project have recognized that their plan to draw from the North Platte River may in fact fail. So as a result, their plan B is to drill new holes into our aquifers. We have already seen groundwater levels in some areas of the Powder River Basin drop significantly due to industrial activity. Since the year 2000, some nearby wells have dropped over 170 feet. And now you're introducing a massive hydrogen plant to compete with local ranchers and the town of Glen Rock for groundwater. This isn't just poor planning, it's a threat to our way of life. If the town's main transmission line is compromised or the water table drops, the clean fuel being shipped to Denver won't do anything to help the people of Converse County who can't turn on their taps. At the end of the day, Wyoming energy should benefit Wyoming people. This project is designed to use our land and our water to create a product for out-of-state airports while leaving us with the bill of the environmental cleanup and the risk of dry wells. The Pronghorn H2 project is a risk we cannot afford to take. And Mr. Treasurer, you brought up the issue of property rights and how an individual should be able to do whatever they want on their private property so long as it's legal. From my understanding, as a member of this state, state land is our land, and it is your job to advocate for us. You were elected as a representative of the citizens of Wyoming who are telling you not only that they don't want this project, but that it's detrimental to us. We implore you to consider the well-being of the very people who gave you your job. And to quote the website of Taxpayers Against Pronghorn H2 Project, to many Wyoming citizens, the real irony is being told that raising legitimate concerns about water, wildlife, safety, and transparency somehow amounts to government overreach. When developer arrogance is met with government silence, except for the local officials who stand with the people, citizen outrage isn't just understandable, it's necessary. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Very nice.
Mr. Chairman and members of the board, my name is Tatum Helmy and I am a junior at Glenrock High School. I would like to say that I'm very grateful for the opportunity to speak to you today. To me, this project does not seem to have a true future and seems simply experimental. I'm a proud resident of the small town of Glenrock and the state of Wyoming. With the installation of these turbines, we lose the natural beauty of our state. They cause noise pollution and even disturb the natural migrations of our wildlife. The installation of these turbines will also disrupt the land that has been taken care of by generations of families who have poured their hearts and entire lives into not only taking care of their own ranches, but also presenting opportunities for future generations, my grandparents and parents included. Being a young woman in the pursuit of an agricultural life, I am worried about what the installation of these turbines will mean for my future. I'm worried that they will disrupt the land I wish to house my livestock and build my future on. I'm not only worried that they won't benefit my future as I pursue agriculture, but I am also worried that they won't benefit the futures of my fellow young agriculturalists, the agriculturists that are here with me today, as well as the ones that did not get the opportunity to come voice their concerns. As a young agriculturalist, I stand against this project in hopes of not only protecting the lives that have been built by generations above me, but also the futures of myself and people beside me and the futures of generations to come.
Thank you.
Nice job, Liz. Oh, do you have a question? Secretary has a question.
I just want to say that was awesome. And we need your guts. We need your values. So stay involved in state government. Please stay involved, not just the federal, also the state side. So stay involved. If there's anything, I can do to help, just reach out. So thanks please for being here. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thank you kindly for this opportunity. My name is Candy Lurson. I'm a resident of Converse County. And I presented at 4 public meetings a couple of years ago against wind, solar, and carbon sequestration. So I even have still my placard. Before I talk about the Eagles, I'd like to comment on talk about water. Don't our aquifers also get recharged from precipitation? And how can precipitation filter through pads of concrete that are extremely dozens of feet deep and 300 feet wide? I think that would also affect our groundwater aquifers. Mainly, I'd like to talk about the biological effects, negative effects of wind farms. Of course, they do affect the birds. I was skeptical of this at first. I'm a practical person, and I thought, how can a bird get knocked out of the air? But when I studied it, I found out that each blade is about 180 foot long. At the tip of the blade, even though it's going slow as we view it, it seems to be going slow. Actually, the tip of the blade is moving at about 180 miles an hour. And the blades cause a vortex which suck birds of all sizes in, and they can't avoid being struck. I'm retired federal government. I worked with biologists. I was a forest writer-editor. I wrote or compiled many environmental assessments and environmental impact statements. There are rules in the federal government about taking an eagle, a bald eagle especially, and it seems funny that that doesn't apply to wind farms where eagles of both varieties are being taken. The fines are high, possible prison time, and yet the wind farms don't come under those regulations? That's weird. Besides affecting birds, there are studies that show they affect other four-footed creatures. A study in Pennsylvania showed that a dairy farm near a wind farm, milk production decreased in a large measure. Milk production was down. Not only that, calf production, fertility was down. Cows were not getting bred as easily. In ranching, that also applies. Lower calf crops, fewer in their calf crop, and lower weaning rates. They don't know exactly why, whether it's a vibration, whether it's a pitch, a pitch inaudible to humans, but audible to ungulates and other creatures that bothers them. They don't eat as much. So saying that cattle can graze near or underneath wind farms, it doesn't work out well for the rancher. One wonders about studies, how will this affect people? Will it also affect us in some similar ways that we are not yet aware of? I also wonder about the recycling. So you give the permit, there's an initial applicant, and they sell out, and then it gets sold out again, and it gets sold out again, and we've seen it in the news where the final holder of the facility may not have the wherewithal to reclaim the land that was used. So then we're stuck with the bill. They go bankrupt, they can't reclaim it, they're not gonna take the concrete out. What are they gonna do with the blades? The blades are sitting were sitting in a stack up at Casper, the last I checked, which has been a little while, but. So I'm a recent resident of Wyoming, but I chose this state on purpose. I love Wyoming. We love the oil and gas here, and I don't see wind farms as being economically feasible, and they're a short-term gain for long-term expense. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Larson. Are there questions from Ms. Larson? Thank you very much, and thank you also for your service. Senator, good to see you today.
Thank you, Governor and Mr. Chairman and Board. It's good to be with you here today. I'd like to address a few things today. First of all, fiduciary duty and the private property versus public policy issue, and then secondarily offer some solutions. So first of all, as a fellow elected official, I share your fiduciary duty responsibility on our state trust lands. However, I do not believe that how we manage those lands should detrimentally affect the citizens we represent across the state as well. They should not bear the burden of the economic impact for the trust lands to possibly make more money. So there's that. But secondarily, as far as private property rights are not absolute. We can't harm another property owner by using our property in a way that would harm them. And when it affects this many people, that is no longer a private property rights issue, it's a public policy issue. That's why we have the Industrial Siting Council, the Public Service Commission, because we know that industrial development affects all the people around it. And so it is a public policy issue, not just a private property rights issue. Getting on to the solutions, I represent Senate District 3, which is Goshen, Weston, and Niobrara. So I was in on the initial contact with the Pronghorn project. And the fact that they went to the state before talking to local landowners, that's a bad actor, in my opinion, because the private property rights of those folks could be trampled on. They could even have the ability to use eminent domain for some of their collector lines. We have not done anything with that. And so from the very beginning, we saw this coming. We saw a massive increase in wind development. And Representative Slagle and I ran the bill on a moratorium, which you vetoed. So that began the fight of this project. There have been several bills since that were designed to prevent the company from coming to state lands first and then dealing with landowners, because it's a way to strong arm landowners. And that's what this tactic is. And that's how this project began. And it started incorrectly from the very beginning. So I have a few solutions. One of them, some of the reason all of this, the little linchpin in all of this is managing CO2 as a pollutant. It's not a pollutant, it's a plant food. We could use more of it. So our energy policy should reflect that. We can't be chasing after the subsidies of all of this Green New Deal failed policy. And so we've got to change direction. So one of my proposals is a bill that I've run in the past. I've slightly modified it because we need to have the legislature weighing in on these large energy projects. Just like we do water development and we vet all of the projects, it goes through all the engineering. We have a select water committee. We have a water development commission. We vet all the projects. We find out how they affect landowners, which they do. Many of the water projects affect landowners. We just heard from somebody whose place was flooded. And then it would insert more of a public process because we kind of have a closed loop system. The Industrial Siting Council hasn't been rejecting any applications. They kind of rubber stamp them. We've now got the Wyoming Energy Authority that is kind of a closed loop system, but with the matching funds that go through there, and there's not a lot of chance for public comment. The public needs to be reinserted into this process. And the best way I can see to do it is through the legislature, vetting all of these projects and setting an actual energy policy rather than just taking whatever subsidy comes down the pike or throwing it all at the wall and seeing what sticks. We need to be vetting these projects. We need to really be looking at what the impacts are and what the potential gains are. The other bill that I'll be proposing to select water on the 21st of January is a bill stating that the destruction of water molecules is not a beneficial use of water. Because that is not, we're taking the water molecule out of the water cycle and we're destroying it. And that has a significant impact on the state and on our citizens. And so those are a couple of legislative solutions I will be bringing, but I would urge you as the board to reverse your decision, to put a nail in this coffin. Clearly, these folks don't want it. It's very highly questionable, the math that's been used. It started out in the wrong way through strong arm tactics. And I would just ask you to revisit this whole project and withdraw your support. And with that, I would stand for questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. That's Senator Sherry Steinmetz. Are there questions?
And I think, Sherry, you know this, is that all the money that we get off of state lands, it goes into a foundation and that foundation grows. So it's we're not spending the cash. So that's the long-term aspect. If you can get enough money in the foundation, then you don't have to rely so much on taxes or anything else to fund schools. But the other thing is that on the, and I would suggest that you support the turquoise hydrogen project. And the reason for that is essentially that if you do that, you end up with the same product. And when that's burned, you have two byproducts. One is carbon dioxide, which both you and I agree on is that plants need carbon dioxide. And the other one is water. So the water gets back into, the regular water cycle when it's burned in the atmosphere and comes down as rain. So you don't lose the water atom. It doesn't go away. It comes back in and it's recycled because matter can neither be created or destroyed. It just gets repurposed. And that's how it would get repurposed in that. And I think the turquoise hydrogen using our natural gas is probably the right way to go. But that's something that I would hope that you would look at. And then also is that if we're going to actually use our investments to the highest degree, is do just what Warren Buffett says to do, and that's to use compounding. And I've been working on that for 3 years, and I know we've had the support in the Senate. I hope you can get some support on the House in that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And to follow up on that, that's why I'm only talking about the destruction of water molecules in the water bill, because when you use electrolysis to split that atom, it's gone. There's no more water.
Yeah, and I had that same concern, so I asked one of our folks who was a physicist, and I said, I'm really concerned that if we use the electrolysis for that purposes of getting energy, when are we going to run out of water? And it's about 1.5 billion years after the sun envelops us. But that being said, is that you have to be careful about where you get the water, because you can have local effects, as the mayor of Glenrock said, is that you need to be able to sure that you have excess water to use in the first place if you're going to do that. But really, the turquoise hydrogen is probably the best way to go at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I agree. And taking water out of Pathfinder or the North Platte, it's already over appropriated. So we'd have to dry something up, right? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Madam Auditor.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, Senator, for being here and especially for coming with solutions instead of it's always good to tell us that we got it wrong, but solutions are even better. And what my question is, I did get this one wrong, and I wish I knew what I did, and I didn't. But one of the things I think I relied on when I considered the balance and initially voted for this was I do place a lot of reliance on the Industrial Siting Council because they have experts at their fingertips that I do not. I am quite capable, but I am not an environmental geologist. I am not a wildlife biologist, and I'm not an attorney. And so you expressed some concerns, and I've heard some concerns today too, that siting council, maybe we as a board shouldn't be relying on that, can you talk a little bit more about that process? Because it's something that maybe I'm making assumptions about that I shouldn't. And I mean, I know they work on it, but maybe a little bit more on that.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, Auditor Racines, for that question. Well, you can ask some of the folks that just went through the 3-day hearing, and it didn't sway them a bit. And we've had some issues with them in Goshen County as well when there was a proposed solar project, and we've had some issues. So I'll leave it at that. And I think there are probably other folks who can speak to that issue more in depth.
Thank you. And Senator, just a couple of things. One, the bill I vetoed was very specific to using eminent domain for wind projects. Now, as a person who also dealt with some of the issues of discharge from coal bed methane water that was damaging to ground, et cetera, and the company I worked for actually funded much of the research that demonstrated how we could repair a lot of that. So this was not an indictment of the coal bed methane industry. It is a comment that the same tactics and the same issues were at play there. There was eminent domain being used to be able to push water lines across private land. There was discharge that was flowing off of one parcel onto other parcels, and in some places it actually caused enormous amounts of erosion. And yet we didn't have the same kinds of response from either the state there either. My reason for that particular veto was because I think that all landowners, when it comes to industrial development, should have a role and a seat at the table, regardless of whether it's wind or any other kind of development. And that was the reason that I vetoed that bill, and it was sustained. The other question that I had, and I asked it a little bit earlier, would you consider supporting sort of recrafting the rare and exceedingly uncommon provision so that in these places where there is a general understanding that this is a very special piece of ground, that we should treat differently? And I recognize this caused enormous problems when it came to Bessemer Bend. But it was the reason Bessemer Bend was not built into a gravel pit. And it's also the reason why above Glen Rock, the scar was put there, because the McMurrays were very upset about that. And I understand all that. But it was a tool that we had. And I think it's a tool that could come back. It was taken away, as I said, because there was excess, but I do believe that there is a solution there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'd be willing to look at anything, but I wouldn't commit until I saw exactly what it looked like.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too.
Hello, panel. My name is Jill Kaufman. I come from Platte County. I'm a business owner. Just a couple of things before I start what I was going to say. The other thing that I've noticed in this, with these projects, is they divide communities. And we are seeing an absolutely horrible aspect to that. And what I mean by dividing is, number one, you have a few of the lease owner, family owners, landowners, and the government employees against the people. We have been in workshops where the chairman calls the people the opposition. It's all on video. We have also been at the last industrial siting where when the people went together and do petitions, and they introduced it as mob rule petition. So it's very contentious in Platte County. Platte County people are willing, we are going to prevail because this is wrong for Wyoming. Now, I also wanted to say, I am completely against this in any part of Wyoming. And here's the reason. Green energy is a lie. We all know it. We've seen the results. It has now been exposed as a hoax perpetrated on the American people by the government and accelerated by the most recent Biden administration. And by extension, you are as well if you continue to approve these projects. And what we also have found is there's no justification that is not, and it's not backed by science. And we've heard CO2 does not hurt the atmosphere. It's good for our plants. The Trump administration also said, don't do it. He said, stop it. We know that all these big corporations are coming into Wyoming, are just trying to get their billions from the Inflation Reduction Act. Do you have any understanding where that money comes from? Yeah, it comes from the people. It also, all you were doing when we approved these projects is running up the nation's debt, and we're at 37 trillion right now. Wyoming needs to do their part along with other states. It is also known statistically, and it's all publicly available, that ever since these green energy corporations have come into Wyoming, our electric bills have continued to go up somewhere from around 24 to 27%. And they continue to skyrocket across the state. We don't need any of it. Our state already exports 80% of our energy, and we live on 20%. Probably none of this energy that will be generated from some of these projects will even stay here in Wyoming. So we desecrate thousands and thousands of acres valuable to our agricultural land, and we don't really need it. This is appalling, and this is insanity. Which this opens up the bordering property owners who are not wanting to be part of this project. And their line of fire, this is also falls into what Senator Steinmetz said was eminent domain when the transmission lines come in and they say, well, we need to get energy from these projects and we have to go across your property. Here's money or we're going to eminent domain. Who knows what's going to happen? That is not talked about prior. Also, and who do you think will pay for the transmission lines? Yeah, the consumer, the taxpayer. And the board is this board is supposed to be serving the people and providing safe and quality regulations, but unfortunately, the public is in the penalty box and paying for everything from every angle. This order by the judge should not be overturned, so I'm against it. I believe you have the authority to be able to turn that and make a decision and reverse your decision. I also wanted to remind people that our counties and our state regulations are supposed to protect the people. And in statute 18.5.201 and 18.5.202, it says we're supposed to promote the health and public safety and morals and general welfare of our country, of our county. The other thing I wanted to remind you, and this goes back to your oath, in the Wyoming Constitution, Article 1, Section 1 says the power is inherent in the people. We have the right to reform or abolish the government in any such matter as we see fit, and we have the right to question things that are not acting according to what we approve of. We are the people. We do not want these big corporations coming into our beautiful, wide open Wyoming home. We also think that anyone who has property, either in the current projects or in the future projects, should abstain and recuse themselves immediately. And that goes to any board, whether it's this board, the county commissioner boards, or even the planning and zoning boards. We've seen a lot of this challenge. The optics is that you are partnering with big corporations over the people and not with what the people want at all. It also looks like you're picking winners and losers. The people always seem to be on the losing side is what we're finding. This is not a good look for Wyoming. Wyoming is so much stronger and so much better than that. I do hope that you uphold to the judge's ruling. And I also hope that you know that you only have a simple decision. The simple decision that you need to make is, are you for the Wyoming people or are you for the corporations? I stand for questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions?
There are none. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Richard Ladwig. I'm from Manville, Wyoming, Niobrara County. And I'm going to talk about a little bit that I haven't heard a lot about today. Give you a little history. I spent 20 years as a county commissioner. I spent 6 years on a super job as a commissioner on the Game and Fish Commission for the state of Wyoming, appointed by the governor. And I've talked to commissioners, I've talked to directors of Game and Fish, I've talked to deputy directors, everybody I can talk to. And some of the things I'm hearing from them is that these windmills aren't good for a lot of things. They're not good for our wildlife. They're detrimental to deer. They're detrimental to sage grouse. They're detrimental to bats, they feel they are. I also was told they're detrimental to the little songbirds, although there's not much of a population decrease because there's so many of them. Talking about leasing the land, most of the people that lease the state land are leasing it to raise cattle on or farm, either way. And it seems to me and everybody I've talked to and a lot of information I've heard is that if you got all these windmills out there, you're going to lose your grazing capacity. So you're going to have to reduce the amount of livestock that you can raise to make a living for your family, so on and so forth. In that way, same thing with farming. You've got to farm around them. So you're losing that productivity on that ground. I've talked to Deputy Director Weltanger. I've talked to Director Bruce at quite a length about this, and I'm not here speaking for them. I've just gathered information from them. I spent that time with them. I just think that these windmills are a problem. My family homesteaded a ranch 3 miles north of Manville, right in the middle of some of the biggest block of state land in the state of Wyoming. Contiguous block of state land. They couldn't have made their ranch work if they weren't able to lease the ground and raise their cattle and raise their crops on that ground. My great-grandfather homesteaded that in 1883. And it's been a wonderful run. I lived on it all my life up to now, up to a few years ago, it finally did get sold. But without the state land and the productivity that is on that state land, they would not have been able to do their job and raise their families. So realistically, that's all I have. I appreciate your time today. It's been a long afternoon, I know, for you. So I'll close with that then.
Thank you, Mr. Lavery. Are there any questions? Richard, thank you for your service on the commission too.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, commissioners and chairman. I'm Bruce Finola. I've made electricity for most of my natural life. I'm retired now. And I haven't seen this much fun since one of our policemen tasered an elderly gentleman and I was on the town council. So I know how you feel. So one of the things I've written quite a few reports that ended up to the Public Service Commission, and I'm familiar with the process and the dollars and cents. And one of the things that hasn't been mentioned here is that since President Trump came along and the big beautiful bill where they clawed back a lot of the subsidies for the Green New Deal, that one of the things that hasn't been mentioned is that a linchpin of the process of making the synthetic jet fuel was that get the carbon capture from the Dave Johnson plant. And I can't disclose what I know because I don't work there anymore. But looking at, there was only one power plant in the United States that actually used the carbon capture, and that was the Petra Nova plant in Texas. And it was just a part stream, not a full stream. And its cost per megawatt hour is estimated anywhere from $20 to $50 a megawatt hour. And according to a publicly released report done for the Sierra Club of all people, the Dave Johnson power plant at that time, bus bar cost was $28 a megawatt hour. That's lock, stock, and barrel. And so if you're talking about adding to that another $50 a megawatt hour, and that the Dave Johnson plant is regulated by the Public Service Commission, I don't think that'll fly. So, that's without any subsidies, because has been no construction for the carbon capture, any kind of carbon capture. So I'm saying a linchpin of the proposed project was carbon capture from the Dave Johnson plant that most likely does not any longer exist. So all they'll be making is synthetic hydrogen. Synthetic hydrogen, even green hydrogen, but the green hydrogen prices since 2022 are down to 1/3 the price of what they were in 2022. Nissan made a very nice hydrogen-powered car, and boy, can you get it cheap now. It was a very expensive car, and it's because the hydrogen has fallen from favor. And so the concern is, and has been mentioned before, there's a bait and switch thing that could occur here, is that if you grant the leases, they could keep the leases and then just sell them to somebody else, Joe's Power and Light, and say, we're going to connect to the grid. And so, again, I think this is what they have proposed is different now. And I think something to look at is where are they going to get the CO2 to operate their designer jet fuel so Leonardo DiCaprio can feel good about flying his jet. Anyway, thank you very much. I appreciate this opportunity, and I must fully disclose, my wife also works for the Rocky Mountain Power Wind Department, so.
Thank you. Are there any questions? There are none. Thank you very much for your testimony.
Good afternoon. My name is Aaron Laura. I live here in Douglas. And I did have something to say, but there's been some great testimony. But I am compelled to say one thing. Your fiduciary duty is to provide money for the students. But what kind of message are you sending the students when you like money more than way of life, the environment, and the voice of your constituents? And on top of that, I'd like to say that I don't know why we're waiting for a Supreme Court decision. You guys can make the right decision today, right now, by denying this application.
Representative Strzok, good to see you.
Well, it's already on. I don't have to remember to push that. So again, I'm Tommy Strzok, Representative Strzok out of Commerce County here. And first of all, I just want to thank you for making this possible and coming here and getting to hear the people's voice. I do feel that this should have happened before to hear the people's voice. And I think there needs to be ways, somehow people are not hearing about the projects that are coming at us. And I think this needs to be something the state really needs to look at, how to get the word out, because we're not hearing it. But then when you did find out, nobody has listened to the people. And now they are coming, here we are. So I do hope this means something and that you can hear them. The other thing is, Judge Peasley, he is probably one of the most fair judges I have ever met. He looks at everything. He has made a ruling, and now we're fighting that. I don't understand that. He spoke. The people have spoke. So I hope you hear this. There is a problem, I understand, in the ranching. I ranch. It's easy to want to take this money. But everyone has said it over and over. I understand you've probably heard it many times. Ranching and farming, we're losing them because of the money that isn't there. So people will take these just for the money. I don't feel our state's in that same situation. We have a lot of money coming in different ways. I'm not sure why we would take money from something like this. My heart here hurts for the ranchers that feel like they don't want them, but they will take this money just to keep the ranch in the family. So I just really, though, the state didn't need to do that. And I understand always about, when we have our property rights, and that puts people in really a hard place, and it's even sitting on the Ag Committee. I understand that, and it would be easy, like saying no more of this because of what it's doing to our country. Even in foreign countries, they're getting rid of these wind turbines. It's making a mess. So why are we behind in doing it now? So some really things to really think about. But again, I want to thank you for coming. Really appreciate it. And hearing the people's voice. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Any questions? Representative, just sort of a point, being a legislator, you know that not all of our legislation is drafted coherently. There are times when we talk about earnings, for example, and times we talk about income and different things. We have massive numbers of references to including and massive numbers of references to including but not limited to. In Texas, they actually passed a statute that said including means including but not limited to. There's confusion. That's all over the rules and everything else. The reason to go to the Supreme Court is because Judge Peasley's ruling kind of goes against what that is. So to be able to say, do we have to rewrite all of our laws, which may not be a bad idea? Do we have to review all of our rules? I think there's some 300 references to it just in one rule in the PSC. So trying to get a clarification on what including means, which is where that decision, as you know, hung. And so that, I think, is the state's interest, is to make sure that we're clear on that language.
Okay, well, I appreciate that, but
Yeah,
Thank you.
it's not so much about the wind issue, it's about the statutory construction and the hundreds and thousands of different things that ruling would affect. And yeah, it just needs to be cleared up. But I think you hit the nail on the head when you said that a lot of ranchers are gonna have to take this just to keep the ranch in the business. And that's really the concern that I have. And then that puts us in a spot where if we're like 10% or 20% of a project and the project's gonna go ahead anyway, then we're in a spot by saying, okay, what we do really doesn't make any difference. The project's gonna be there and you're still gonna have the same impact. We're just not gonna have any revenue that comes off of it. And that's kind of the math that you go in there. And I think probably that one the tie siding one or whatever, I probably looked at it and I probably say, well, we're just not getting enough and we need to change our lease arrangements. There's so many things that we need to do as far as looking at our leases, because we're not getting as much as we should off of our state lands. But thanks for stopping by and we'll see you down in session.
okay, thank you.
Very much. Senator Boner.
Well, good to see you all again. Once again, thanks for coming up to Douglas. Yeah, I guess my comments hinge on the last two comments from the board. First and foremost, I think that the result you see here today is a consequence of a developer who thought it'd be easy to develop state land and literally looked at Duncan Ranch, looked at that large block in Niobrara County, and said, well, let's do some paperwork in Cheyenne. And voila, we have a project. I hope they understand that that's not how things work. I hope everybody who might be thinking of doing something similar will notice this is not a good use of our state lands. This is not what it is for. Because you see what happens when you just fill out paperwork and you don't engage with the community. So I think that's the first takeaway here. And if there's a way that you could hopefully distinguish between those projects early on, which one is just a result of something that's primarily on private land, which is a developer targeting large chunks of state land, and begin to differentiate those early on. Perhaps that's a lesson learned from this situation. Another one, to your point, Governor, yeah, it is difficult with the lawsuit, with the legal question in front of the Supreme Court now. Is this going to apply to, say, a natural gas power plant, maybe somewhere down the line that may be looking to do something similar? It might be primarily used to power a data center, but could also sell to the grid. Are we precluded from that sort of development on state land all of a sudden? So yeah, appreciate all the issues that this has brought up. It's certainly one that we struggled with on the Agriculture Committee back when I was on. The first bill I had vetoed had to do with state lands. I remember that one, Governor. And so, but it's a tough issue. How do you distinguish between the projects which are good to go, which have support of the community, which support our energy economy, and which ones are like this one, where frankly, somebody thought that they cut a corner and realized that, if the shortcut were a shortcut, it'd be called the way, right? So appreciate y'all being here. If you have any questions, more than willing to help either on this issue or the one we had this morning. Yeah, thanks for all you do. Thanks for being here. And I think once again, the lesson here is you can't use state lands to put your project together and then think about, talking to the actual landowners as an afterthought.
Thank you. Any questions for Senator Boner? Senator, I just want to compliment you on being able to work with you over the years. Sometimes you think you have a simple solution in place and then it goes through the legislative process and it goes kind of a little bit wonky. But thank you for your diligence. You've been a phenomenal asset to the legislature. Thanks.
Thank you, Governor. Appreciate it.
Mr. Slagle, good to see you, former representative.
Thank you, Chairman and Board. Thank you for coming to Douglas, Wyoming to have this meeting. Makes it a little easier for some of us to get here. On this topic of the wind projects, I mean, I had 4 concerns from the beginning of this project. I think they're still there. We've heard many of them expressed today. Number 1 was the use of our water to make into hydrogen. Number 2 is the possible use of eminent domain, either to bring more power to the project or to get power away from the project. I mean, it's with eminent domain laws in our state right now, that is an issue I think we need to look at. And then also number 3 is the burden on our present electrical grid, because wind energy, as we all know, is not reliable. Even though it's been very windy here in Wyoming the last few months, it isn't always windy. And so when the wind doesn't blow, they need other power. And so they'll have to have access to our grid, which is, with all the data centers coming on, it's going to be overtaxed. And then the 4th one I have is, unfortunately, even though our state land office does work hard, they tend not to be the best negotiators of surface use agreements with companies. And so that is a concern of mine. Sometimes they make a deal that was discussed earlier with the oil leasing, that it's a lower lease than private people have, and so it drives more demand for the state lands. And so those are my 4 comments. I appreciate you guys hearing everybody today, and I'd stand for any questions this time.
Thanks. Any questions for Mr. Slagle? Alan, thanks.
Thank you.
Marguerite Herman, good to see you. Thank you for coming all this way.
Mr. Chairman, it was a delightful drive up from Cheyenne. I have to say, it was one of the nicest times of my week. Board of Land Commissioners, Chairman, my name is Marguerite Herman, and I'm here as a longtime advocate for the beneficiaries of school trust lands, which have been mentioned only kind of by reference today. I was going to start out with a little tutorial about the Northwest Ordinance of 1787 that set up school trust lands, and that they were created and designated for states when they became states, as we did in 1890, for the sole purpose of generating money for schools. And so I guess I've just done that. I wasn't going to, but there it is. And so I have 2 questions after listening to the heartfelt, sincere, and legitimate complaints of the room today. Is 2 questions. So what are you going to do if you accede to the sentiments expressed here today? How do you plan to fulfill your trust duty to the beneficiaries, which is school funding, K-12 public schools? How do you plan to do that if you write off certain things as being more than just unpopular, but also, you know, people complaining about quality of life, et cetera? So that, and because the trust duty, as anyone who knows in the legal biz, is the highest duty, the highest possible duty under the law you can have is to a beneficiary. And the stated beneficiaries in our Constitution, our Act of Admission, is K-12 public schools. And the state legislature right now is figuring out exactly what it costs to educate our wonderful school children. So how are you going to do that if you write off certain things for whatever reason? We have put the burden on oil and gas, who have really shouldered the burden of our school funding for years, for decades. There are also property taxes. Okay, those have been cut. So do we shift burden to oil and gas and taxpayers, homeowners? And I guess that can be a choice you make, but just understand that you got to figure out about the trust duty and the shifting of, I mean, you still have to pay teachers and keep the lights on. So that's sort of a challenge to you. The other, and just to clarify, people I think are conflating the leasing situation with the wisdom of the whole hydrogen biz, which, you know, leasing is only, we're not taking an investment and we're not investing in the project itself. Anyway, but the question that comes up, and that I think, you know, people like Judge Peasley's decision, I think he got one thing wrong. He conflated your job, your leasing decisions with the regulatory process that is absolutely necessary before something is a go. DEQ, this, you know, industrial siting, all those regulatory pieces that come separately, land use planning, et cetera. And how are you going to make that process rigorous enough so that people have confidence that they don't bring hydrology issues to you, because they know that they will be dealt with responsibly and effectively in that second phase, that separate second phase, at the regulatory phase of this thing. Because people have expressed that they want you to make those decisions. They're bringing, you know, dust, noise, traffic to you, and you don't have a hydrology department. So you're trusting the regulators of our executive branch to listen to the concerns, weigh them, and make a decision. So if something is not recommended, because it's not a good thing. So it seems, I'm not saying that they are not worthy of confidence. I have no idea. I think they do a good job. Their complaints, some people don't think Siting Council does a good job. I don't know. I have no independent knowledge of that, but clearly, regardless, there is no confidence that that is a rigorous process that is thorough, is accurate, et cetera. So those two questions I just put before you. How are you going to discharge your duty as trustees if you're going to, you know, as you make decisions? And then how are you going to ensure that the follow-up regulatory part of the process is actually works for the good of Wyoming? So, and that's all I have, unless you have questions.
All right, thank you, Marguerite. Secretary has some questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Herman, I just want to delve a little deeper, because your analysis, and you come to the board a lot, is that, well, and this is the analysis that we've seen from, at times, remember in the aftermath of the approval of this wind lease, from members of this board, which is that money comes in, thumbs up. That means that's consistent with the fiduciary duty. That's basically the only form of analysis. Money in, thumbs up. And there are so many problems with analyzing the fiduciary duty in that way. So I guess one of the questions I want to ask, I mean, is there any other considerations other than money coming in? For example, one of the problems with this lease, Sidewinder and Pronghorn, we brought this up, is that the rights of the lease can be assigned to another entity at any time by a foreign company. We have no idea whether they could assign the rights of the lease to a subsidiary that goes broke, that has no assets, and we have no ability to claw back and get funding for bonding, et cetera, et cetera. So should we consider things, provisions like that in these leases, or just because it has money coming in, that's consistent with the fiduciary duty?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate you reiterating some of the points made here today. Revenue is not the only thing, but it's not nothing either. And I think that it should be in the mix, is that you do have this trust duty, but not to the detriment of the land. You know, the rape and scrape kind of days in the 70s it doesn't work, because it degrades the land. Although I have witnessed this board make political decisions that Like when they refused to close, this poor grazing lessee said, please close my land, close this land to recreational shooting. And the board didn't do it. I mean, it was destroying the land, it was hurting the lessee, and didn't do it because recreational shooters, won the political day. So what I suggest is that you somehow, if you can extract the politics, make a hard economic and you don't have the staff to do a thorough environmental analysis, but you do the thorough job. Politics are not nothing either, I will have to say, as we all know. But if you can possibly say, is it good for the trust? And not everything is good for the trust just because of a dollar, obviously, but it's not nothing either. And I think that it goes into the mix. And again, your trust duty to the beneficiaries is not that every dollar it makes it worth. It doesn't argue for every single proposal that comes to you, but you have to consider it. And again, it's intergenerational trust. So you got to think about the next generations coming in, the children. That is, you have to weigh that. Absolutely. You can't just lay waste to land and sort of, extract every penny from it. And that's why I think, the legislature has not really done a very good job at monetizing recreation, which is a non-consumptive use of land. Why don't we do that? That would be a good thing to do, I think. But, I know the legislature has struggled with doing that. I think there's a lot of possibility out there. Conservation leases. So no, you don't have to consume the land and set up some great international, horrible, shell game. I would say it's an interesting question. I never suggested it, that the revenue is not the only thing, but I think making, if not a wind farm, then what? I just put that out to you. And it's just a question. It's just a question. And I think OSLI staff is fantastic at analyzing and weighing proposals that come forward. And if you don't think they're looking at enough stuff, add to their punch list. If you think you need more information, if they're not doing well enough. I think that if not wind farms, fine, that's fine. Don't do another wind farm, but you got to do something to fulfill your duty, your trust duty.
Thank you, Ms. Herman. Any further questions?
Yes.
Mr.
And you touched on this, but right in the first thing when you said that, it's that the state lands are for the beneficiaries. And we don't monetize anything. They're basically, the people in Wyoming feel like they're a state park rather than, for the benefit of the beneficiaries or the benefit for everybody. And that's the slippery slope that politics has gone down for quite a while. And it's going to be, I think, almost impossible to monetize a recreation. I remember when I was still in the legislature, there was a interim topic about, having I guess, basically having a hunting stamp or access stamp like it was a state park, to go into it. And that was just hit the lobbyists on the hunting and the shooters and the fishermen, and everybody just raised all kinds of hell, and nothing ever got done with it, and probably nothing ever will. But, what I can do is invest more efficiently. I think we can do that, but it's going to take some help from the legislature. And I think that the secretary and I have hopefully came to, an understanding about something that might work on that regard. But just one thing on the water, it's basically 448 gallons a minute or 1 cubic foot per second for 312 days. That's how much water this thing takes at 200 million gallons a year. So that's actually kind of quantifies it, where it's not nebulous. But yeah, we have to figure out how we can monetize some of this stuff in the future, and definitely do a better job protecting those assets from, as you described it, a shell game. And we do that in some regards, but I never. I mean, you look at the oil and gas people; they do the same thing. They'll get an operator in there. I think they did it on coal bed methane. And one guy sold it out to somebody, some LLC. They didn't have any things, and we ended up getting stuck with the bonding and reclamation requirements. And so, yeah, we've got to be a lot smarter, and we need to do some really deep dives. But I think you explained our problems. 400 to 500 million extra dollars will have to go into education because of the last lawsuit a year. That's something that we have to really understand, that liability is out there. And at the same time, we're taking property taxes away. We're not keeping them, and I don't believe in the increase of property taxes that we've got. That's too burdensome of a tax, so that has to be redone. But we're taking revenue streams away at the same time that it's getting more expensive. So the legislature's got to make some tough decisions on education to try to keep that in there. I mean, I look at what is it? The Potter Academy had like 80-some% proficiency. And I don't know what that deal is, but maybe we ought to look at that and see whether or not we can take some money out of it. We're spending so much money, but we're not getting any value out of that. So we got some hard ground to plow. It's just, we're gonna have to figure out, how to navigate that and still protect the rights and protect Wyoming the way it is. Now, you could take a page out of the Trump brothers. Yeah, they basically use wind energy in Texas and natural gas fired wellhead generation, and they mine Bitcoin for $37,500 a Bitcoin.
Well, and Mr. Chairman, if I could just real briefly congratulate our state treasurer for doing a fantastic job with the permanent school land fund. I forget how many billions of dollars it is, but the return is wonderful. And so I appreciate all the work you do to take that corpus and invest it wisely. You guys do a great job. Yeah, I think that we just need to be creative, and maybe there are all ways to make money off land that doesn't ruin a ranching operation. But I think we just need to be more, maybe just a little more inventive, or just search it out. And that's the legislature's job to vet those things. New Mexico does a great job at monetizing recreation, and we can learn from a lot of that. And yeah, and just there's a lot about there, ways that you can discharge your trustee duty that is will make money for the kids and sell to Peoria, as they say.
Thank you, Ms. Herman. And I think you're up next, but I also noted that I had missed out Joseph Kibler. Is it all right if we take him? Thank you, sir. Mr. Kibler, we'll hear you now. Thank you, Mr. Kibler. Are there questions for Mr. Kibler? No, appreciate it very much, Bo. Thank you. Come on up.
Chairman, board members, I'm Dan Cushman. I'm a sixth generation rancher. We were chased out of south of the border down here. Came up here to Wyoming to ranch. My folks have a ranch that I'm a partner in now through the LLC that is surrounded by those state lands, that block of state lands there in Niobrara County. You talk about property rights. Why would one neighbor do this to another neighbor? That's my big question. Why? And you are our neighbor here on the state land board. You control those lands. Through those lands and that, then you depreciate the value of that ranch. We came up here to get away from that kind of nonsense. Another big problem is you talk about property rights. I can't build a pig feedlot right next to my neighbor's property and the runoff go onto his property and destroy his property value. Isn't this the same thing? It is. Another thing you haven't looked at, and you talk about for the schools and for the kids. My wife's a school teacher. She's worked for the Niobrara County School District for quite a number of years. And the enrollment there keeps going down in Niobrara County. One of the reasons is it takes more land for ranchers to ranch. So you keep growing and trying to support your family and your operation. So there's less kids. I have a son that was, him and his wife and 2 kids were planning on moving back here. When this whole thing come about, they've changed their mind. They don't want to move back to Niobrara County now. As a larger rancher sell out to the wind and solar energy projects and this hydrogen project, one of the problems is then the neighbors sell out because they don't want to be next to this. So that larger landowner gathers that property up. He then leases it to the wind and solar, and it affects more people, and it takes more people off of the land. Less kids in the schools. Our school district there in Niobrara County is very slim as it is. We're declining every year. And I ask you to please not do this to our county. It's going to decimate Niobrara County. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cushman. Are there any questions? No, appreciate that.
This will be brief, and I'm not talking about gravel. So maybe a solution, and I know this has been mentioned before. My name's Carolyn Griffith. I'm with the Casper Mountain Preservation Alliance, and this can't be fun. This feels like you could take the word windmill out and put gravel pit. It's the same thing we've been hearing for 2 years, and you've been hearing for 2 years. And basically, I think it comes down to one thing that might help, and this is from a citizen standpoint, is that if we could just get notice ahead of time, instead of a pop goes the weasel, here's the lease that's been awarded, and now you can react to it, and now you're stuck in a position where you can't do anything else about it, and you're hearing how we're concerned about our water supplies, our wells, our cattle, or whatever. And there's some legislation that's weak, that can't protect us. And we'd like to be in a position where we all believe that business owners and developers are going to do what's right for Wyoming and do what's right for the citizens that live around the properties that are the state has stewardship over. But the fact is, that's not the case for everybody. Some of them make decisions that they do use, like Senator Boner said, I think they're using the loopholes that are there to get around some of the permitting processes. And in my case, it's specific to gravel and the LMOs, and they have to get game and fish approval to make sure that antelope or mule deer or some other species isn't going through there that's going to be damaged. But they don't have to tell the homeowner who has a well that could be damaged ahead of time. You don't have to get permits for that. So anyways, there's some loopholes that are being worked around. And if we only knew ahead of time, before you get in the spot where you've already awarded these leases, not so that we can fight and argue and fuss, and I could use another word there, but so that we could inform. And then it doesn't become this angry mob. We've had an opportunity to have our voices heard ahead of time before the decisions were made. And I just beg, I think we're all begging for that, and just to help avoid this battle. So I thank you for your time and for consideration.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else online? I don't see anybody online. Is there anyone else who wants to address the board? Anyone? All right. Thanks. Madam Director. Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a series of motions.
Okay.
I move that the board rescind the wind energy leases issued on April 3rd, 2025 to Pronghorn H2 for the reasons set forth in Judge Peasley's opinion issued December 5th, 2025, including the fact that the board's lease violated Chapter 6, Section 2 of the Rules of the Board of Land Commissioners, and that the lease to Pronghorn is not being used to collect and transmit energy for transmission to the energy grid.
Okay. Is there support for that motion?
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question? Oh, sorry, I guess I have a question after.
Yeah, you seconded? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, for the secretary, were you talking about were you referring to both leases or just the one?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Because the decision dealt with Pronghorn, the motion in relation to the granting of leases, this first motion deals with Pronghorn because the decision of Judge Peasley dealt with Pronghorn. Okay. So it's a series of motions, but this is the first one.
Mr. Chairman, another question, hopefully. One of the things that, and I say this for the public too, that this board is required to comply with is the Public Meetings Act, which I don't expect you to know or care about. But it is something that we have to comply with. And the Public Meetings Act is very specific about
Notice.
And this is a special meeting. So the board meets every other month, and those are regular meetings down in Cheyenne. And the law explicitly says at a regular meeting, anything can be brought up at any time. And it also specifically says that at a special meeting, any action taken has to be noticed. And the notice of this special meeting was for public comment only. And so, I guess my question is, and I am not speaking at all to the substance of the motion. My question is, would this motion be better made at a regular meeting of the board? And I'm going to read from the 16-4-403. Action taken at a meeting not in conformity with this act is null and void and not merely voidable. Now, like I said before, I am not an attorney, but I guess how I don't want to support this motion knowing that it's void. And so maybe some analysis as to why it wouldn't be void since action on these leases was not noticed, And regardless of what side we're on, I don't think that both sides of this transaction are here. If that, there's a question in there, hopefully that could be,
And Madam Auditor, I'm glad you brought all of that up. I'm not clear that we have latitude to do that. There may be a lot of support for that motion. Certainly, I think my colleagues to the right, and probably to the left as well, would like to take that forward, but it feels like it should be more on a regular meeting. And Mr. Peters, I think the other issue is, yes, Judge Peasley has vacated the vote, but it is before the Supreme Court. And so not really understanding what that status is, I think probably having the benefit of some more deliberation might be valuable. Mr. Treasurer.
Yeah, in that thing in the Supreme Court, I think if we had action either now or in February before the Supreme Court had a ruling, then the basis for going forward to correct the bad law would not have an opportunity to ripen. And you would end up with a situation where you have Peasley's decision, but it was contrary to the laws that is the understanding of our Attorney General. But he'd have no way to actually get in front of the Supreme Court to correct the bad law. And I'm not talking about the decision to go forward or with or without the wind lease. It was what the chairman talked about earlier, is how do you actually interpret limited or not limited to. The way that it should have been interpreted is that limited, it's essentially, it's unlimited how you can look at something. You don't have to say and not limited to put a laundry list in there. And when you're in the legislature, you try not to use not limited to, because when you put the laundry list in there, people start thinking about, well, this is all you can do, and that's not how the law is interpreted. But if we don't get that clarification in the junior court, then we're looking at a situation where we basically upset the apple cart. So that's something that I'd ask the attorneys, and I think I see them nodding their head, but that's something that we'll be able to flesh that out between now and the regular meeting.
And I know Mr. Secretary would like to respond.
I'd like to respond to that. A couple things here, Mr. Chairman. You know, I'd like to lead with my concern about the way this noticing has been done for some time and some of the rulings we've seen on this. I mean, at the last meeting, we actually had a ruling from the Attorney General's office that taking public comment is inconsistent with the Public Meetings Act, which is kind of
in
absurd.
an executive session.
No, that was also done in an article. He went to an article and gave the statements he made in the executive session. So, and you said we weren't going to take public comment in open session. So I just ask, why wasn't this noticed in this way? Why is this constantly sort of being done in a way where action is not to be taken? And where we have this comment and now we can't take action. And it gets back to Mr. Giesi's comment, which is that I'm tired of the politicians that set this up where action is never taken. And this is a common tactic where something happens, people say that they don't like it, as they should. It was noticed very poorly last year. And then everybody says, well, we can't do anything at this point. And it's always this endless deal where it's noticed in a way where we can never take action. So I want to get this to the finish line. I think we need to have a special meeting before the February meeting. I don't want some action by the AG that is going to undercut us. We have a decision from Judge Peasley that is on the table right now where the pronghorn lease has been declared null and void. We can go ahead and rescind that lease because a judge has declared it null and void. And then the appeal to the Supreme Court, which was done without board action, is moot. And that's what I think we need to be doing. Now, to respond to the treasurer's comments, which was another thing that was stated in executive session, but then later the AG actually went to the media and said what he said in executive session, which is that, well, we have to appeal this because it has including implications on every single lease and every single area in the green books and Wyoming state law. Every single use of including is going to be predicated on this decision from Judge Peasley. That is incorrect. Appealing this actually jeopardizes that, then it becomes binding law and precedential in every single case. But right now, this is with respect to the pronghorn lease, and that was acknowledged. And so it's actually the opposite from the argumentation that we've gotten. Just like when in the aftermath of approving this lease, you told me that it's inconsistent with the fiduciary duty to say no to this lease, and the judge actually said, no, it's inconsistent with the fiduciary duty to say yes to this lease. So we have to actually dig into these issues and unpack sort of the actual meaning here and not just use sort of cheap lines to prevent action from being taken. So I think we need to come back here and do this special meeting properly noticed within the next week or two and get this done so we don't have some sort of intervening action that undercuts the board like the Attorney General did a couple weeks ago.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr.
I just clarification. I think Mr. Secretary, you're saying we should come back here and have a board action to vacate that based on the district court's ruling. Then you said, and then we should appeal it.
No, I didn't say that. We say we vacate it and then the appeal is moot, is what I said. And so the fact that the AG has undercut us, his appeal is moot because we have vacated the lease, because in the intervening period, we have followed the judge's ruling and we have acknowledged that it is inconsistent with the board's rules. It's pretty simple.
The problem, Mr. Chairman. If the appeal is moot, then you've got bad law on the books as a precedent.
Mr. Chairman, that's the last thing I responded to, which is that the whole notion of including going out the window because of Judge Peasley's decision is incorrect. In fact, it's actually on the table now because this is a binding precedent potentially from the Wyoming Supreme Court rather than specifically in relation to the pronghorn project.
Mr. Secretary, if it doesn't get to the Supreme Court, I'm trying to understand how it is a binding precedent.
Mr. Chairman, that's my point, is that including is not in jeopardy because of Judge Peasley's decision. Judge Peasley's decision is within respect to the use of including within the rule, not the use of including in every single area of the Wyoming state law, the green books, or the rules. That is just incorrect analysis. And it's been acknowledged in previous sessions we've had. So I just reject that whole idea that the board has to move forward with this because including and every single use in the green books is on the table if we don't do this. We have a decision on the table right now from Judge Peasley saying that the lease is null and void. We should rescind the lease. The appeal that the Attorney General did without the board's approval is then moot.
How do we rescind something that is already vacated?
Mr. Chairman, absolutely you can do that. It's consistent with the order. You rescind it. You rescind it.
I'm just trying to follow your logic.
Yeah,
here.
it's
And
pretty
I am
consistent with common sense.
trying to understand. I think we have a particular issue with special sessions that makes life a little bit difficult here. I'm happy to entertain moving ahead. I have complaints from Platte County about the commissioners there not following probably proper procedure. That could happen here. I have an issue very similar to what you're talking about with complaints in Hot Springs County that we're trying to figure out because of a series of gymnastics that have to do with the way a particular lawsuit resolved and didn't resolve in the interim. And I guess what I'm asking for is a little bit of time to understand what the implications are and come to the regular meeting. I don't believe any of the impetus to rescind that meeting will diminish in the interim. I do think that we'll have a chance to make a wiser decision based on that understanding, and we won't be in violation of special meetings law. But that is up to this board. And it would then be up to whomever wants to challenge it in court.
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
And then I also saw the
I
superintendent.
want to respond to you.
You can respond. I'm just giving the order, sir.
Yeah.
That you respond all you want, and then we'll go to the
Okay,
superintendent.
thank you. You know, Mr. Chairman, as was done on this Crusoe deal, we could have a special meeting and properly notice it with relation to the rescission of the Pronghorn lease. And I guess I would ask, why could Crusoe go on a special meeting with 5 days' notice, but we can't have a special meeting to rescind this wind lease? If we want to go to the regular meeting, I guess I could, but I just really reject you saying now that we can't have a special meeting properly noticed to do this in a week or two, but we can do Crusoe. You seemed very thrilled about that. And I assume they ran that by you in relation to the noticing. I mean, and so we got to get this done because I don't want more undercutting. What was done by the Attorney General was really problematic. And I don't want, I'd rather get this done so we can handle this.
Mr. Chairman.
Madam Superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, I'm interested in figuring out how we move forward here. And so what we need to identify is what mechanisms can be used to make a decision on this lease. I never want to overpromise and underdeliver, and I'm not going to make some wild motion that's going to get struck down by a court. We need to do this properly. And so the question I have for our legal counsel is, was this meeting noticed in a way that we can make a motion regarding the lease? Yes or no?
Mr. Chairman, Madam Superintendent, Jim Peters at the Attorney General's office. This meeting was noticed, as mentioned, as a special meeting, and as Madam Auditor pointed out, special meetings are limited to the discussion, deliberation, action. Any action is limited to the items that are specifically noticed. Related to this matter, the meeting notice says, I want to make sure I get this correct. I believe it says public comment on wind leasing. It was noticed in that manner, and so that would be all that the public would have noticed that the board would do. It would be our thought that any action taken that is unrelated to public comment or any action taken related to wind leasing or any other matters would be outside of what has been noticed for this particular special meeting. That does not mean that it cannot be noticed at a different meeting, or if this were a regular meeting, then it would be appropriate, because any business before the board can come before the board at a regular meeting, even if it's not specifically noticed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, if I could follow up.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In this case, and while I may not agree with how the meeting was noticed, the worst thing we can do for this community is to make an improper decision that is struck down and we are 10 steps backward. I'm interested in going forward. And so what I would propose is that this topic with the regular meeting, we can have wind leasing discussion. We can make a motion during that time. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, Madam Superintendent, that is correct.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So for me, I think our best option is to look at our regularly scheduled meeting, stay with our process. Right now, this has been struck down by the judge. We know that it's under appeal. The appeal this board did not vote on, but we can discuss this at our regularly noticed meeting. Number two, what we need to do is do better in the future. And I think we have heard that loud and clear from this group. We need to evaluate our state lands in general, which the governor did mention about how we are handling these parcels and what our communities want. We need to create greater public notice of these proposals as they come up. And I want to put together a group to work on that and roll up our sleeves and do that and provide suggestions to this board to improve. This process needs to be improved moving forward. And I think that those are the two action items that we need to have. And at our regularly scheduled meeting, which is in less than 1 month, we will discuss this and we can propose action. I've already been working with legal counsel to determine what the best means to do that is. Again, you make a motion that is just struck down immediately by court. It does not help anyone in this room. We have to do it right. That's good governance. And that's what I think we can do at our next meeting. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Now, Mr. Secretary.
Mr. Chairman, and that's fine. We can do it the next meeting, but I hope in the next month, we don't have an attorney general and a court system that is undercutting us. That's the last thing that I want. And I do think in the future, we need to have consultation with board members on the way these meetings are being noticed. And I will tell you that I definitely push back on the public comment is inconsistent with the Public Meetings Act. Public comment can be done at any time. And that, I believe, is very clear in the Public Meetings Act. That is not inconsistent with the Public Meetings Act. And so I really push back on that from the last meeting. But I hope, dithering and delaying doesn't cost us in this, but we need to get this to conclusion. We
Mr.
need
Chairman?
to get this to conclusion.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Treasurer.
And in the meantime, I'd ask our AG representatives to give us an analysis about the effect of the Peasley thing as far as a precedent in future situations where it's the same way. I think there's two ways to rectify that. One is you go to the Supreme Court and we get it reversed. Or two, we put a preamble in all of our statutes that says that limited to or not limited to or whatever just means that it's not limited. Similar to what I believe the treasurer said. I mean, the former treasurer, the governor said on the Texas law. So I think there's two ways to address that. One is through the Supreme Court, and one is to actually put it in the statute so we don't have these conversations again.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. Mr. Peters, and then I'll recognize the auditor. I think you're reaching, aren't you? Yeah, okay. Mr. Peters, can you tell us if the Pronghorn developer has also appealed this ruling?
Mr. Chairman, yes, Pronghorn has also appealed this decision.
Thank you. Madam Auditor.
Mr. Chairman, and I think we're pretty clear on that this can be brought up at any regular meeting and action can be taken with or without notice, but I do hope we notice it, just saying that out loud, since I can't make a motion. So, thank you. That's all.
Mr. Secretary.
Mr. Chairman, just want to respond to a potential underlying sort of assumption with your question. And maybe I'm reading the question wrong, and you can correct me if I'm reading it wrong, but there was a notion in your question that Pronghorn appealing is material to that motion that I sort of had drafted, put on the table. I just disagree with that because we have the ability to rescind, and then at that point their appeal becomes moot because we've rescinded based on Judge Peasley's ruling before the appeal ripens. So I just wanted to make sure I don't know why you asked that question, but I think maybe I was getting on a potential reason and I wanted to respond on that, so.
Yeah, I'm not an attorney, so part of my question really goes to giving us the time to understand exactly what that means. So.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and I'm happy to, whenever the next meeting is set, whether it's at the next regular meeting, have a full discussion with the board related to everything related to this particular case or any particular action that the board might take on the leases. Of course, that would be appropriate to be provided in executive session, but happy to have that discussion, answer any questions that the board members may have in advance of any future meeting for consideration.
Yeah, thank you. I understand the concerns here, and I understand the desire to have some action that tries to figure out how to rescind it. But I think to the superintendent's good point, if that dies unceremoniously, that doesn't help anybody. So, anything else? Please, come on up.
I just wanted to say that this decision that you're making is one of the reasons why a lot of people don't like government. I mean, for me, you set the agenda up so we couldn't have the vote. That's how I see it.
Thank you, sir. All right. Further comment?
Yeah, Mr.
Madam-
Chairman, we can, when we see the original agenda, if we have a question on it, we can ask for an amended agenda, right?
Yeah, I think it's.
Yeah, okay.
I think
just
it is
wanted-
publicly
I just
noticed.
wanted to clarify that it wasn't,
Yeah.
I mean, we all have a part in it if we want to play the part.
And I don't think anybody engineered anything here, but anyway, please, Madam Director.
Mr. Chairman, you just have a motion and a second on the floor that you'll have to
Yeah.
dispose of somehow.
So what's the pleasure of the board? We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Well, I mean, it's been deemed, oh, excuse me, Mr. Chairman. My
I
understanding,
kind of want to vote. I mean, you
It's-
want to rescind the second?
well, it's my understanding that that would be deemed out of order. Is that?
Yeah, it would be, but I also said I'm happy to go ahead.
You can deem it
And,
out.
and I know that means that I am not performing my duties according to law. I want to do them according to law, but there we are.
You want to deem it out? Is that, what do you?
I'm happy to deem it out of order because I think we have a way to deal with it. So, and I think the way to deal with it is to go to the regular meeting, which is in a little bit of time. I think we are not anticipating, I don't believe, any kind of action between here and there. And I see Tommy, Representative Strock.
Well, that's okay. I think most of them here know me as Tommy, so I think that's okay. Thank you, Chairman. The only thing I want to say, the people came, they spoke, they stayed because they want to know how you all feel. I think that's the main thing.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, wavering, Tommy. I'm wavering right now because there's a lot of good testimony. And the one thing that might sway me to saying adios to me is people is really looking at the money that will go to the beneficiaries. And if it's only just, a few $1 million, that's something that I'm like. Yeah, so Tommy, I can tell you I'm wavering, but I'm not quite there yet. So I'm gonna look at the testimony a little more, especially the fiduciary part that would go to the beneficiaries through the trust fund.
And Representative, I'm going to just wager here, and they can all correct me if I want. This board would rescind that lease. There's no question in my mind. And so I don't know if you can take that to the bank, but it's probably as close to the bank. You probably put it in stable token. What I would say is that I hope we bring the same degree of scrutiny to, I mean, this has been my issue forever. When we have transmission lines that go across the land, as we just did for not green stuff, but for just normal stuff, that we don't trample on people's property rights. I think the issue that we've talked about here today about property rights and value, well, the state also has a value, and I believe strongly that we've got to figure out how to be able to say, if you've moved your property to state land because you get to use recreation on it, somehow the state's got to be able to also get some benefit from that as well. And that's not an easy thing to do, but I think that is something that the state's going to have to reckon with. You know, when I first got my ranch, I grew up on a ranch, still run it, but then Dad was dumb as a post, I thought, and then he got smarter. When I first got my ranch, I had 2 neighbors. I now have 64. And I'm concerned about what they might think about how that land goes. And so I think these are issues we're going to be wrestling with for some time. Mr. Secretary.
Mr. Chairman, I want to note one other thing. The Wyoming Attorney General is appointed by you and serves at your pleasure. And I would ask you to please instruct the Attorney General not to undercut the will of the board over the next 4 weeks.
And Mr. Secretary, I'm happy to do that. I want to explain that the Attorney General and I talked about the issues that were made unclear by Judge Peasley's inverted ruling. It may be the right one, and I'm happy to do that. But the reason why we wanted to make sure it was clarified is so that we didn't end up with crazy issues. I told him that in my mind, we should probably think about that. He said what he said, which is it's the Attorney General's job to represent the state. I will tell him that he cannot undercut the will or the decision power of this board.
In the next, even in the intervening period before we have that
Yeah,
motion.
and I don't understand what he would do.
There are some things he could do. And I don't want to give ideas, but
You know, and I think to cast aspersions on the Attorney General, former justice, is, I just don't think that's a good idea, Mr. Secretary.
Mr. Chairman, hold on, please. I take deep umbrage at you saying I cast aspersion.
I take
He stepped in
you.
and there are.
Step outside. You want to step outside?
Are you threatening me?
No, I'm asking if you want to step outside.
Are you threatening me? I've never seen anything.
Mr. Chairman.
That is astounding.
Mr. Chairman.
Look, Mr. Chairman, back to the issues. Please stop interrupting. Mr. Chairman, I just asked that we have the Attorney General not undercut the will of the board in the next month before we hear this.
And that was answered.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
And you know, I know there's at least 2 of us on here that have ran bills to make the Attorney General elected. So they didn't serve at the whim and the will of the governor. And I'm not the one that requested that.
Mr. Chairman.
Madam Superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, this has been very unproductive the last couple of minutes. I'd like to get us back on track here. Because the chair has not ordered it out of line to have that motion, but because our attorneys have told us that they cannot defend that, I will rescind my second, not because I don't believe we should look towards action, but because, did you rule it out of?
I did.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. All right. So since it's been ruled out of order, we know where we're at here. Mr. Chairman, I would move to adjourn the meeting.
It's been moved. It's been seconded. Thank you. I appreciate everyone being here. Thanks.
Well, that's a wrap, folks.
I wasn't trying to interrupt you. I was just trying to get it in.
Hope you guys enjoyed watching the State Land and Use. I'm sorry. The State Land and Investment Board today. I'll be commenting on it tomorrow morning in my live show. I'm going to share the story that I shared with the meeting today. So if you missed that, I will share that story, and I will make my comments on state land use and investment moving forward. And I'll do that tomorrow morning in my live show. I can see there's a couple of you still hanging around, keeping an eye on things. God bless you guys. Hope you guys have a great Thursday evening. I've actually been working this whole time, so I'm going to get back to work here and hope you guys have a great
evening, and I'll see you tomorrow morning. God bless you guys. Take care. Bye now.
Sun comes up on a small town road, coffee in a thermos, steel toe boots. You don't flinch when the wind blows cold. You just do what you're born to do. Calloused hands on a busted gate, fix what's broke till it holds its weight. You don't cut corners, don't fake the shine. You see it through every single time. That's the code of the West. Stand tall, give your very best. Your word is the mark on your chest. You ride for your people, you don't forget. Some things you just can't buy. A clean heart and a clear sky, know where to draw that line. That's the code of the West. That's the way I ride. You shake a hand that's a 90. Doesn't change with the way you feel. If you say you'll show, you'll be on time. Rain on the roof or a blue sky shine. You wear the name on your paycheck proud. Hold up the crew when the chips fall down. You don't brag big, you just get it done. Few words spoken, but you speak in tongues. That's the code of the West. Stand tall, give your very best. Your word is the mark on your chest. You ride for your people, you don't forget. Some things you just can't buy. Like a clean heart and a clear sky, know where to draw that line. That's the code of the West. You can't put a price on trust or sell your soul for a little rush. When the line's in the dust and you're toe to toe, you walk away clean, let your backbone show. Be tough, be kind, but never bend. Where you stand is where you begin and end. That's the code of the West. Stand tall, give your very best. Your word is a mark on your chest.